It is a big weekend for college football here in the state of South Carolina. The Gamecocks can prove that they are a legitimate top 25 team with a win over Ole Miss, and the Clemson Tigers can put their boot on the throat of the Florida State Seminoles, possibly getting Mike Norvell fired. I mean, anything could happen.
Really morbid off the start today.
No, I mean, not this weekend. I'm not saying he's going to get fired this weekend.
Saturday night.
That's a crazy statement. I'm saying this could end Mike Norvell's – it could be the beginning of the end, so to speak, for Mike Norvell. It's Wire to Wire. He's Cole Bryson. My name is Diesel. Welcome in. Tolos, which means turn it on, leave it on. Shout out to the 17 of you who are already watching the live stream, and you can find us, watch us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Just search for the Fan Upstate across your favorite social media platforms, and we are there streaming the show live in Technicolor.
I'll tell you what, there's nothing better, Diesel, than being out and about in the community in the last 2 to 3 months. Now that our Tolos are starting to run with the Tolos, being out in the community and hearing people say Tolo, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. It's fantastic.
I love that we have people texting into the show, calling into the show, calling themselves Tolo Steve or Tolo Bob.
They get it.
You're figuring it out, guys. You got it, man. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of all of you. And I'm proud of the Upstate for showing just a tremendous amount of resilience and a tremendous amount of community over the past week. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show, just kind of recap where we are and where we've been over the past week. It's been wild, man.
1 week ago, I was sitting here by myself thinking, what is happening right now? Really?
Yeah. We've had some fantastic conversations with Spartanburg County Sheriff, Greenville County Sheriff, members of the big electric co-ops that are operating in the area, and we're learning an awful lot too, as you guys have as well, about kind of how all of our systems work. Most people kind of take a lot of that stuff for granted, and we've seen a lot of that on social media. People taking it for granted. Oh, it's easy to fix the power lines and get them back up and running.
It's taking so long.
Yeah, exactly. What's taking so long? We've had a lot of that over the past week. We're going to talk about that later on in the show, and we're going to make sure we circle back around for the next 4 hours to pick up your upset picks. Those of you who wait until Fridays, it's crazy, Cole. Last week, we had a handful of Tolos wait until Friday to get in their upset picks, and then a hurricane came through, and you didn't get your upset picks in for valid reasons, but you just kind of thought, it'll be fine. I'll wait until Friday to get my upset pick in.
You need to be like me and get it in immediately. Like I do, right?
He'll get his in on Monday. Cole Bryson.
Actually, no, Saturday even. Saturday. Come on.
I guess a lot of people like to cheat a little bit and wait for the Thursday night games to play through, and then say, okay, well, let's knock a couple of those off the board. I don't know that it helps you much, but hey, you do you, I guess. But Cole, we got some big games in the state of South Carolina. One of them is in the state of South Carolina. Number 12, Ole Miss, making their way to Columbia, taking on the South Carolina Gamecocks, who have been very good so far this year. Started off 3-1. You feel like you might have a decent option in your backup at Robbie Ashford. And you got, of course, Clemson heading down to Tallahassee to take on a down bad Florida State with a new quarterback. I mean, this is a situation where it might actually breathe some life back into Florida State. That's the one thing. That's the one thing I look at in this matchup between Clemson and Florida State and say, that's interesting. What's going to happen? That's kind of the X factor, the wild card, right? In that matchup is will Florida State and the team come out a little hotter this week because they've got a new quarterback that, they don't feel like we got DJU out there taking snaps again. It's kind of like the Carolina Panthers fans and the way
exactly
Panthers fans feel.
Say,
about getting out from underneath Bryce Young. So the question for you, Cole, and the question for all the Tolos who are listening, 71307, text in, start your text with keyword fan. If only one of the two FBS Power 5 Palmetto teams covers the spread this weekend, who's it gonna be?
Only one.
Only one.
Okay, I'll answer that, but I want to go back to something you just said really quick, because I do think there is validity in you bringing up a new quarterback. I don't want to say the word worry. I don't want to say concern, but I do have a little bit of curiosity, Diesel, now with Florida State having a new quarterback, in the sense of exactly what you brought up with the Carolina Panthers, exactly what happened when Andy Dalton came in to replace Bryce Young. Not only did Andy Dalton improve, not only did the quarterback position improve, rather, Diesel, the running back position improved, the defense played better, the wide receivers played better. So, again, I don't have worry that this new quarterback who's 0 for 4 on the season is going to come in and light it up. However, it does add a little bit of a wrinkle, in my opinion, not having a ton of film because, like I said, he only has 4 attempts. I do believe, on the flip side of that, Clemson defense, the Tigers defense can shut all of that down very quickly, though, if they come out and do what they're supposed to. But I do have the same curiosity now as you do with Brock Glenn, new quarterback for the Tallahassee Seminoles, not Florida State anymore, but Tallahassee, because they stink so bad. But I do have a little bit of concern.
Yeah, hope is the word that you're talking about.
Yeah,
hope for the Florida State fan base, hope for the Florida State receivers, running backs, offensive line. I mean, we don't know what's going on inside the locker room, right? Has DJU lost the locker room to the point where they don't even want to fight for him anymore?
Yeah.
So,
and when I say concern, I don't mean much at all. It's just an added piece of concern. But to get back to your question, who's most likely to cover one of the two? If you tell me I can only pick one, it's fascinating. Clemson minus 14.5. I certainly look at that game, and I really do look at that game as go ahead and lay the money. Clemson should cover that 14.5. However, on the flip side, if you told me South Carolina 9 points in the SEC with 2 programs like this, with Carolina's defense as good as it is, I could see that as well. However, if I have to pick one, and we'll get into why in a second, but if I have to pick one of the two, I think the easier cover is by far Clemson at minus 14.5. South Carolina, the only thing that concerns me is how does Ole Miss come out? We talked about it all week long, them coming out with a business trip-like mindset, and South Carolina maybe losing by 2 touchdowns. I could see that happening. I just don't see Clemson and Florida State being close.
Well, the thing that concerns me is Lenore Seller's ankle. I mean,
that's true.
It's a little shaky at this point. We don't know. And we're going to talk to Matt Smith a little bit later on in the show, Smitty, who's really plugged into the South Carolina Gamecocks program.
Yeah.
Talks about him each and every day on his platforms. I'm gonna see if I can get an answer from him just what condition Lenore Seller's shaky ankle is in right now. Obviously, he didn't play 2 weeks ago. He's had lots of time to recover. But really, there's a difference between being able to walk around on it like it doesn't hurt and then being able to run on it and plant on it and get hit and go down and maybe not tweak something again. So we really got to know how Lenore Seller's ankle is feeling right now. And if he's feeling good, I feel really good about South Carolina covering in this game.
Oh, really?
If it isn't 100% to the point where he can take hits and go down on it, then they have to play Robbie Ashford quite a bit, then I'm falling back a little bit. So I'm with you. I'm with you. The easy answer is Clemson covering the 14.5. I mean, I think you could probably push this thing up to 21, and I would still take Clemson to cover.
I'll tell you what, I know that quarterback change, Diesel, when you talk about Vegas lines, quarterback change usually impacts the spread a good bit, especially in the NFL. However, what does this tell you about DJU? What does it say about the quarterback that he was, that they had a quarterback change from DJU to Brock Glenn, and now the line's not even moved much? I mean, half a point. I mean, really, what's that say? It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. But on the flip side of that, I would like to ask the Vegas bookies of the bookmakers, 14.5. Is this a trap game where you're wanting, where Vegas is wanting the majority of the population to take Clemson, or the majority of the bettors to take Clemson? Because it certainly feels, to me, a little bit of a trap game.
I feel at the moment, I feel for DJU because DJU this year has totally bulldozed his prospects of ever getting drafted in the NFL. I mean, coming out of Clemson, people might have said, oh, well, square peg, round hole, that kind of thing. You go to Oregon State, you look pretty good. And I'm still not saying that he was ever, after people watched him play.
Yeah.
He was never a first-round draft pick. But he could have been maybe a third-round draft pick kind of guy, maybe a fourth-round draft pick kind of guy. I mean, the absurdity of what we saw last year with South Carolina's quarterback going into the 5th round absolutely blew me away. His grade should have been way higher, should have been taken off the board way before that, Spencer Rattler. But DJ to me now looks like a 5th-round draft pick quarterback.
Yeah. He does.
If even that. I mean, I think he is absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, played his way out of the NFL draft.
Going back to South Carolina, 9's an interesting point spread here. Being at South Carolina, it does add value to a choice to take the Gamecocks if you want to take Gamecocks plus 9. I just do believe at some point, if we can get past Lenora Sellers, you brought up Lenora Sellers.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get past that, at some point this season, I've been saying this for quite a few days now. Is South Carolina good? They are good. Are they improved? In areas, especially at offensive line, I think they are. I think they'll get better. However, I still think at some point, Diesel, whether it be during this game or whether it be next week in Tuscaloosa, I believe at some point this season, we're going to see very soon that South Carolina's offense has issues. I think so. I think we're going to see that even with Lenora Sellers. Again, do I give Lenora Sellers in South Carolina a ton of credit for going on the road and beating Kentucky, who doesn't look like a terrible team? I really do. I give them a ton of credit. However, I'm not sold on Dow Loggins. I'm not sold on the receiver room at South Carolina. And for that reason, I struggle taking South Carolina plus 9. I really do. If I were to bet on it, I probably wouldn't take the Gamecocks in 9. Do I think they have a shot? Yes. But going back to what I just said, I think we're going to see very soon, and I could be wrong, but I think we're going to be sitting in these same chairs next week having the conversation of, man, South Carolina's offense did not look good. I really think so. Yeah, I really think so. I just don't trust the receivers, man.
And you're putting that squarely on the receivers, not any other, not anything else.
A little bit of Dow Loggins as the offensive coordinator. I'd say like 75% or maybe 70% receivers, 30% offensive play call.
I think it's maybe a year early for South Carolina and this offense. And if you can look serviceable through a majority of this season, I know this is not something Gamecock fans are going to want to hear, but if you can look serviceable and look okay, putting up 17, 20 points a game with this shaky wide receiver room, knowing that you've got Mazio Bennett, who's going to emerge as a really, really good wide receiver next year, I'm sure. Obviously, he's already getting started, but he's a freshman, right? Yeah. And if you can have him emerge and get better and add some more weapons around Mazio Bennett, next year you've got a really, really good wide receiver room. You've got a quarterback with another year under his belt. Obviously, you got to be able to keep these guys in Columbia. Transfer portal can be a hell of a thing.
Keep the defense together.
And in years past, we've seen South Carolina become a little bit of a feeder system for some other schools. If you can keep those guys happy and keep them on your roster, I think the 2025 receiving core quarterback combo is going to be really, really good. So just enjoy the journey, right?
And again, I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't have a ton of faith in those two things, especially the receivers and Dow Loggins. Could the offensive line also be an issue Saturday? It could. I hope I'm wrong. I hope South Carolina goes, or I say goes on the road. I hope South Carolina at home Saturday, Diesel takes down Ole Miss. And for the second week in a row, Ole Miss is in a state of, confusion and concern. I don't see that happening. Again, I know we've had several upset picks taking the Gamecocks plus 9. Tolo Phil just sent it in on the text line.
I think you might be thinking a little bit with your heart on this one.
You think so?
Tolo Phil?
Oh.
Yeah. Not you. Tolo Phil.
Tolo Phil.
Yeah.
Is Tolo Phil a fighting Gamecock?
I don't know.
Let us know, Tolo.
I don't know his allegiance. That's one thing I like about Reddit, especially the sports Reddits, is you have to put flair next to your name. I don't know if you've ever used Reddit.
I have,
Cole,
yeah.
But you got to put flair. So you are announcing right there with your flair what team you're a fan of, so people can kind of understand, like, oh, this is a Ohio State homer,
like Spur Daddy.
Spur Daddy. We all know
before he changed his name to JV.
He's not a fan of the San Antonio Spurs,
right?
That's for sure.
Right. Especially not in South Carolina.
Now, I like South Carolina's defense to probably hold Ole Miss to 28 points, but can this offense score 29 points on Ole Miss's D?
That's the question. We'll see. So I do feel confident in Clemson in 14.5. Yeah. Look. Could Brock Glenn be an added wrinkle? Maybe for a quarter. I just think that this group, even though they're not the most veteran, experienced group in the country of Wes Goodwin's defense, I think they're going to shut Florida State down. Look, Clemson's defense is legit. Sammy Brown, those guys, the young guys that are emerging defensively, I think they're going to have a field day. And Clemson's offense, Diesel, it wouldn't surprise me if Clemson's offense struggles out of the gate for maybe a few minutes, a quarter, and then Clemson gets going maybe in the second half, and it's 28-7, something like that. I don't think Clemson's going to blow Florida State out. I don't think it's going to be 56-7. I don't think. I still think Florida State has some guys on defense that should slow Clemson down. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're just that bad defensively. I knew DJU, there were questions there. I didn't think Florida State would be this bad defensively. They have been. Clemson could blow them out, but I guess that's an interesting question. If I told you asked me the question, who's more likely to cover? If I told you, Diesel, that one of these games Saturday, and Tolos as well, play along at 71307. Start your text with the word fan. If I told you that only one of these games would be a blowout, which one would you say it would be?
Only one's going to be a blowout. I'd say it's Clemson.
Okay.
I think Clemson is, honestly, I really think Clemson is going to blow Florida State off.
Think so?
I think, yeah. Florida State does not have a top 50 defense. They're not stopping anybody. They're not making the big stops when they absolutely have to. Yeah. So I think Clemson's going to run all over these guys.
I just don't know how they're that bad. Florida's,
that's a great question. How does a collection of athletes that should be good all of a sudden look that bad?
And I get that, but defensively?
Yeah, it's like the question I always ask with the NFL. How is it that you see bad football in the NFL? These are professionals. These are the best of the best. They have matriculated up the little pyramid, and they are the top 1% of football players. Right. So how can they look so bad?
Wesley on the Facebook stream, we'll get to a few texts as well. Wesley says, do we think DJ's dad, Big Dave, will be at the game? I almost feel bad for the guy. It's so embarrassing. You get benched coming into your old school you got pushed out of. That's true. It's a good point. Wesley says if the team still likes DJ, that might add some fuel for them. But if he's lost the locker room, it's going to be bad.
DJ always looks like a sad puppy. Yeah. Right? He always just looks like he's got those little
puppy eyes.
Like he's so close to having a little lip quiver.
DB on the roll call, in the YouTube stream. DB says here, didn't even call on you, and you said here. Good job, DB. Tolo Phil answered your question, Diesel, and said Gardner Webb.
Oh, interesting.
How about that? JT and Greer
so
says.
So is my dad. My dad's a Gardner Webb alum. Yeah. Fighting Bulldogs.
Boiling Springs, North Carolina. JT and Greer says, I agree with Cole. Still lots of questions on the Gamecocks offense. Kevin Buggs wants Duke over Georgia Tech +9. That one sounds familiar. You know why? Diesel took it.
Because I took it. Toot.
Styles
Come on, in. Kevin. We're going to the top.
Kevin Buggs and
Hop
Diesel.
in, loser. We're going to the top.
Come on. Don't start. I don't want that. I got to get Purdue on this top. Styles says Iowa +18.5 over Ohio State. That's a big one.
Oh, my God, Styles.
Gosh.
Yeah, but then again, Iowa's due for a big upset every year. You remember in years past, Purdue has always pulled a big upset, every year.
They're doing it Saturday. Saturday, baby.
Calling it.
Saturday. I need them back.
He's like Babe Ruth pointing at the right field fence.
I really do. I really do need Purdue to show up.
I think you're going to ground out to first, Cole.
Yeah, I might. All right, Diesel, coming up next. Last Friday, you were not here. I brought up some audio from our buddy Lawton Swan. I talked to him before the show and said, hey, man, I like this audio. It's really intriguing. want you to hear it because I don't think you've heard it yet. And a lot of our audience probably was not with me last Friday, being, that a hurricane just hit. So I'm going to repurpose this audio and bring it back to the surface and get your thoughts, Diesel, as well as our Tolos regarding Clemson next. Coach AJ gets his upset pick in, says Ball State over Western Michigan -10. Ty Duncan 864 says Stanford over Virginia Tech +8.5. Justin L wants Baylor +13 over Iowa State. A lot of upset picks coming in right now. Text line 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Diesel, last Friday at 5 o'clock, I brought this audio to the surface. And again, I know a lot of people in the upstate, a lot of our Tolos were dealing with the effects of Hurricane Helene. So probably the majority of our audience might be hearing this for the first time, I would imagine. I think you're going to be hearing this for the first time as well. But I reacted to this audio from our buddy, Lawton Swan, who we have on of Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton's really good at covering Clemson. He sat up right next to us at ACC Media Days. Listen and react. Our thoughts on the other side. Here's what Lawton Swan said just a few weeks ago on how Clemson's program is being run by Dabo Swinney.
This is going to bother a percentage of the Clemson population, but I quite frankly don't care. I don't care if Clemson wins another national title if they continue to do things the way they're doing it. I would prefer that than to get into the muck of 30% graduation rates, 53 transfers coming into your program over 2 seasons like Louisville. If that's the program I got to be, I don't want to be it. I don't want to be that. I wouldn't like it. It kind of goes back to, so before Clemson won 2 titles in 2016 and 2018, and I've always said this about those titles, dude, like if you came out with an expose and you said, oh, Clemson was cheating and you had all this evidence and you laid it all out there and I couldn't deny it, I would go, dude, I don't want those titles anyway. And somebody in the chat can say holier than thou. I don't know if he's talking about me or not. My thing is, like, I want the programs that I support. I don't care if it's a professional program. I don't care if it's a college program. I want those programs to run the way that I try to run my family and my kids. I want my kids to be honest. I want them to do things the right way. I want them to believe in hard work. I want them to know you got to bust your tail to be successful. I want that.
All right, that's Lawton Swan, Clemson Sports Talk. And Diesel, that's some, mic dropping audio there, basically where he says, I would rather have the program that's run the way it is and no championships compared to programs that are run differently that do have championships, like Georgia, that have 30% graduation rates. He mentioned that. I think that my agreement last week fell somewhere in the middle. My thoughts did. What do you think when you hear that audio?
That Lawton is mainlining the Kool-Aid.
Ooh.
That Lawton has an IV going directly into his arm that's pumping in the orange Kool-Aid because, Cole, this is sports. The fun is in the winning. The fun is in the winning.
You know who said that?
Who said that?
Dabo Swinney.
Dabo Swinney.
So, to your point.
Yeah. I want to support a winner. I don't want to support mediocrity because Lawton can say this because you have national titles. You can look back and say, well, we won national titles when we did things our way, the right way, the best way, the way that I agree with, approve of, and can think back fondly on.
Yeah.
But if you didn't win those 2 titles and you were still sitting in the Tommy Bowden era of 7 wins, screwing around and losing to Wake Forest.
Yeah.
The Clemsoning era. A lot of y'all don't like that word. But if you were still in the Clemsoning era and you never had the 2 national championships and all the other appearances in the playoffs in the national championship game, I don't believe that you would have the same opinion. I don't believe that Lawton and probably a sizable portion of the Clemson fan base who he represents, there's some. We get them that text us all the time, Cole. Anytime we say anything negative, oh, graduation rates.
Yeah.
Oh, they're all good men.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you. You care about it because it's something you still get to hold on to.
You know, what's so fascinating about what Lawton said, and I said this on Friday, Diesel, and first of all, I'll say this. I don't push back on what you just said either. I do think that you're right in terms of Clemson having won the 2 championships in 2016 and 2018. They've been there. They've been to the mountaintop. They've tasted greatness. And now all of a sudden things are different. I do think there's validity in that. In fact, I remember specifically somebody talking about that exact thing with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill left Kansas City, left Patrick Mahomes, Diesel, to go to the Miami Dolphins. Would Tyreek Hill have left Kansas City to go to the Dolphins if Tyreek hadn't won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs? Probably not.
And there's rumors swirling around that Tyreek Hill is trying to get a deal done and get back to Kansas City.
He should have never left. He made a mistake by leaving,
right.
Talking about football terms. So that's the example I use here. Once you've tasted that success, once you've been to the mountaintop, I know that people and coaches and other people in this profession can tell you that it doesn't change the way that you act. It doesn't change your work ethics. It doesn't change your mindset. I just don't believe that, man. I don't believe it. I've done it personally with very small, minute things, Diesel. When you get here, you get this terrible, terrible sense of being comfortable. That's a terrible sense. It's a terrible feeling to have. And I believe that whether it's the smallest, minute thing in the world that you're trying to accomplish, or whether it's winning a national championship, I do believe it factors in to your edge, your hunger, and your drive to go get another championship. That's why winning another one after you've already won one is so difficult to do. So I agree with you. I don't entirely disagree with everything Lawton said. However, I wouldn't trade championships for anything.
Have you ever heard a head coach who's won a national championship ever say, "That's good enough for me. That's good enough. I've got my one. I don't want to win anymore. I'd rather just kind of take my foot off the gas a little bit, slip back to middle of the conference, middle of the pack." No, because those head coaches get fired. That's what happens. You get fired.
Yeah.
Look, I know Clemson fans don't like this. I know South Carolina fans love to throw this word around. But, I mean, I think Lawton's guilty of a little bit of that cultish behavior, a little bit of that cultish mindset of, we got to focus on all the things other than winning right now because we're not winning right now. I mean, I understand that they're 3-1. I get that. I'm just saying on a national scale, you're not making the playoff.
Yeah.
You weren't making the last couple of years of the 4-year playoff. You might make it now because it's 12 teams, and the ACC will probably get 2 teams in. Basically, you make the conference championship game, and you're probably in. I was listening to Josh Pate earlier today, and he was talking about the likelihood that he believes that the team that loses the conference championship games will go in as the 5, 6, 7, 8 seeds.
Sure.
And like that just sucks to me.
Defeats the purpose.
It's really like, okay, so now we're going to rank these conferences and say, okay, the SEC is the best conference, so they're going to have 1-5,
yeah.
And then the Big Ten's going to have 2-6.
Yep.
Like this, it sucks. There's no fun to it anymore.
Well, that's what it's going to become if that's what happens. If he's right, then it, I don't want to say it's pointless. So let me go back to what you said in terms of the cultish word. I think it's more of complacency. I really do. I think it's just complacency of once you taste success, like whether you're a player or a coach or a media member or a fan, right? Everybody falls into one of those categories. When you taste any level of success, I believe that our bodies, our minds, our brains are designed to trick us and give us a sense of complacency that slows us down in terms of our drive and our hunger and our edge that we have. I don't believe there's any way that Lawton's point, look, I agree with him on wanting, he talking about wanting to raise his kids the way Dabo runs the program. Nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with that in my opinion. However, I don't buy that you would be willing to trade those 2 championships of 2016 and 2018 in, because in my opinion, you're not talking the way you're talking now if it aren't for those championships.
Mm-hmm.
To your point a minute ago, if it's 2024 and Dabo Swinney has never won a championship, how is Dabo Swinney viewed as Clemson's coach? I mean, seriously, think about that. Without those two, and you come back and say, "Oh, he did win them." I know he did, but I'm saying in terms of complacency, right?
I think if Dabo Swinney never won a title at Clemson, he would be looked at as kind of like David Cutcliffe at Duke. Like, they love him. They love Cut at Duke.
Yeah.
And he stayed there for a long, long time because he did better for the program than any coach had done there in a long time. And they let him stick around, and he didn't really feel like working any harder. He said a couple times, yeah, I had other job opportunities that came along, but I had Duke Medical right there at my fingertips at all times. So a lot of the other extra things were what made that job so much more attractive. He didn't push that much harder so that he could get the job. He could go from Duke to Auburn or from Duke to wherever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a chemical in the brain that gets released whenever something good happens for you. Mm-hmm. It's called dopamine. Mm-hmm. And what Lawton is talking about is more like mopamine. Like, you're just moping around, feeling like, oh, it's good, cool. We got graduation rates. I mean, like, when is anyone but a Clemson fan and the ones that get into our DMs and get into our notifications, when has any fan ever walked into a sports bar and had a conversation with the guy sitting across from him about graduation rates, about collective GPAs, about postgraduate philanthropic works? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. You've convinced yourself that you care. And I'm calling you dumb for convincing yourself that really matters.
Well, the way I look at it is, to put a bow on it, West Virginia, Diesel, Virginia Tech. How about even Wisconsin? I'm naming programs that have seen success over the years, right? But have never won a championship. Mm-hmm. That's what you would be without those two titles that you would trade in 2016. And I know you won the one back in the 80s. I get that. You had one national championship, but nobody remembered. No young Clemson fan remembered that. My point that I'm trying to make is, it's very easy to say, oh, yeah, I'd trade those championships in just to have this program run the right way, without knowing the feeling you'd have right now if Dabo Swinney were still at Clemson with no championships. Because the reality of it is, none of us, no Clemson fan can give or explain or try to describe the feeling of no championships under Dabo Swinney if that were the case, because it's easy to say, well, looking back on it, I'd do this or do that. But all I'm saying is, Diesel, there's no way a fan base that's so close to winning national championships, that's in the playoff hunt year in and year out, would just say, hey, we like our program being ran the right way, therefore we don't really care if we win national championships or not. We're just happy that we have good guys who graduate, and that's all we really care about. That's easy to say after you've won two in the last decade.
Yeah, the question is, do you want Clemson to be Penn State before all of the Sandusky stuff happened, right? People used to think, oh, Paterno's up there running this program the right way. Old school ball coach running the program the right way, never sniffed a national championship. Is that what you want Clemson football to be?
Texter from the 415 real quick before we run says, I think Lawton's audio makes me uncomfortable to hear a media member talking openly about supporting a team and using we and things like that. Gives him major fan bona fide, but erodes his credibility as a media member. Just my 2 cents.
Well, he is Clemson SportsTalk.
He's a Clemson media member. I mean, yeah, it's a Clemson centered.
It's Clemson site.
Right. That's right. So yeah, it's not like he's just.
And hey, there's a place for every way of covering a team, right?
Yeah.
You can cover a team as a homer, and that's a very valid way to build a career.
And a lot of fans. You can build a career as a hater, like Paul Feinbaum. Yeah. Or you can build a radio career by trying to kind of play the middle and call it like you see it, which is what we do here.
on the Fan Upstate. When we come back, Cole, Panthers at the Bears this weekend. You're not going to believe what Caleb Williams said about the Carolina Panthers. That's coming up next. We're also going to predict and kind of figure out what do we expect to see this weekend. That's coming up next on the Fan Upstate. talked about a couple different college games coming up this weekend, Cole, where he couldn't quite figure out some of the discrepancies in the spread in the rankings.
Yeah.
And this one kind of hits me the same way. This NFL game coming up this weekend for the Carolina Panthers. They're going on the road to face the Caleb Williams-led Chicago Bears.
Your boy.
A franchise that has fleeced the Panthers so hard over the past 2 seasons, Cole. It's unbelievable. But the Carolina Panthers with Andy Dalton are going on the road to play in Chicago this weekend. And Caleb said something that if I'm a Carolina Panthers fan, and I am, readily admit it, I'm a little pissed off about.
I hadn't heard this yet.
I don't like this. I don't like this. Caleb Williams talking about. I'll just let him tell you.
Okay.
Hang on.
I can do my Caleb Williams impression.
I need the thing turned on.
It is.
It is.
Try again. What about now?
Yeah, I know about it.
There we go.
A little bit, not too much, obviously. Grateful that it happened. Be able to be a Chicago Bear. I'm not too deep into the history of kind of what happened, but I do know it got us a bunch of different things, DJ and picks and myself included.
He's talking about all the different trades that happened to get the number 1 pick to Carolina 2 years ago, which obviously resulted in Bryce Young, and then send a whole bunch of assets to Chicago. So I can't fathom the people who don't have a problem with Caleb Williams' whole vibe. Hey, Caleb, what do you think about all the trades that got you here to Chicago?
Yeah, I know about it. A little bit, not too much, obviously. Grateful that it happened. Be able to be a Chicago Bear.
I read something. I saw a tweet.
You are so terrible. What did you want him to say? What did you want him to say?
I'm a student of the game. I understand what moves had to be made to get me here. He just has this total I don't give a rip vibe, and it's rubbed me the wrong way since somebody first said Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 overall.
I know
this
it
guy
is. I love
sucks.
it. I love it.
He sucks as a person. Hey, Caleb, what'd you do after you lost? Well, I went home and watched some TV and cuddled with my dog.
I love your Caleb Williams hate. I absolutely do. It really, it's comical. And just for the heck of it, I now play the side of pro Caleb Williams just because.
Yeah, you like that he paints his nails?
Yeah, totally. Can't you see that? What'd you say the spread was?
The spread on that game. I don't have the spread.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said
I don't know.
Closer than. Let me see.
I don't have it, but the win percentage is pretty high. It's like 65%.
All right, let me look.
For the Chicago Bears, and that's what I can't understand, Cole. That's what I can't figure out. Why do the Bears have a 63% chance to win this football game? I understand the Bears defense is pretty good.
Chicago is favored by 4, by the way.
Okay. Top 10 defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations. Shout out to Chicago and the staff for putting that thing together. But the offense sucks. I mean, they suck on offense.
You think Panthers should be the Carolina Panthers should be a little more favored? I mean, I don't think.
But the Bears haven't scored more than 24 points all season.
They're 2-2.
And under Andy Dalton, the Carolina only 2 games. The Carolina Panthers haven't scored fewer than 24 points. And as a matter of fact, they scored 36 on the road in Las Vegas.
If you had to take it right now, what would you take? Chicago -4 or Carolina +4?
I would take Carolina +4. I think Carolina's going to win this game.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I don't have any faith in Caleb Williams. He's a B word that I can't say on the radio. Can't say that word.
A bear.
No, not a bear.
I thought he was a Chicago Bear.
Caleb Williams is a bear. He's a bear.
Just to let you know, Carolina all-time against Chicago is 1-3 in terms of covering the spread. But even though that's bad, not in the favor of the Panthers, I will agree with you here. I think the Panthers are going to win this game as well. I do believe the Panthers last week played well against Cincinnati despite losing the game. I think there were things to build on. Carolina's defense last week was not good against Joe Burrow. Now,
I think we're all a little guilty of thinking that the defenses phenomenal performance against the Raiders was how they were going to play all season long after that point.
And they lost another
key piece. Yeah, that changes things. Shaq Thompson going down, that changes things.
No, I think Carolina does have a chance. I think they do win. I think they bounced back last week, was not good defensively. I do think they're better. I think they bounce back. I don't know that Chicago's offense is much of a threat to the Panthers. So
Caleb Williams is the 24th best in the league as far as touchdowns. He only has 3 at this point. He's 21st in the league in total passing yards.
Yeah.
He's thrown a lot of interceptions. Caleb Williams is having a standard rookie season. He's having a standard rookie season.
Not great by any stretch.
Right. Not great, not awful. Just
I like the Panthers. I really do. I think there's value there, +4.
Yeah.
Sheezy wants SMU +7 over Louisville. That is his upset pick. You can continue to get your upset picks in, but let me tell you, Tolos, you only have 3 hours left. 3 hours left for this week to get your upset pick in because the upset picks challenge closes at 7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Really 6:52:30 if you want to be exact, because that's when we kind of sign off the air. So
that's when we pull the cord and fire out of the cockpit.
That's right. And I believe you can get yours in right up until 6:53, but you better do it quick. Don't wait. Just don't wait till the last minute. That's never a good idea. Don't be a procrastinator with this upset picks challenge. Get it in now, regardless of who you're going to take. 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. We'll be joined by Matt Smith, Sports Talk Media Network, next. Fridays during football season, you have the pleasure of hearing from Matt Smith, Smitty of Sports Talk Media Network. We go straight to the phones where we bring on Smitty. And listen, I want to ask you about everything that's happened in the upstate and Western North Carolina. You know, my question to you, Smitty, is what's your favorite rally around sports to unite us memory? I know 9/11 and the few sporting events after 9/11, there were some pretty good ones, but which one stands out to you? Because sports does have a way in kind of uniting us and bringing us all back together.
That's a great question. And I can tell you what jumps.
We lose you? We got you.
I'm still here. I was going to say it's a great question. It's a fantastic question, Cole. And I was just on the phone not long ago with Will Merritt. And he's in Western South, up there in the Greenville area, in the rural area where they haven't gotten all the power back on. And I know, and it's just awful. It's awful. And so this is a fantastic time to bring this up because we've really been through something here in the Palmetto State and up in the Tar Heel State. I am no fan of the Mets. But when I was growing up, I was a big Mike Piazza fan because I am a Dodger fan. And he came up with the Dodgers. And, of course, he had the connection with Tommy Lasorda. He had been groomed a little bit by Ted Williams, who had seen him hit as a young player. And he had a great story coming up, being drafted in the 62nd round. And for the way the New York Mets handled post 9/11, wearing the FDNY and the police department hats and accoutrement, I loved it. I loved everything about the way they handled it, the spirit we saw from that city, and for Mike Piazza to hit a game-winning home run in baseball's return after 9/11. I still think about that. I got chills watching it live. And that's a completely different situation than what we're going through now. But what you said, rallying around, just the idea that sports brings us together. It's one of the things that unites us, even if you don't like each other, Auburn fans and Alabama fans. But you agree on one thing, there's nothing better than a college football Saturday. And I still think about that moment, Mike Piazza hitting that home run. And I remember thinking, I wish the Dodgers never would have let him get away.
Matt Smith, Sports Talk Media Network, joining us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. We spent some time, Matt, earlier this week talking about Ole Miss, South Carolina. Ole Miss coming off the loss there, maybe on their revenge tour, but South Carolina's coming off a bye, which could very well be the great equalizer. What can you tell us? What have you learned about Lenore Sellers' ankle condition? Is he 60%? Is he 80%? Is he 100%? Exactly where is that ankle? And as such, how much Robbie Ashford do you think we might see against Ole Miss?
Well, it's a good question. I know that Coach Beamer is being somewhat tight-lipped about it, and with good reason. He doesn't want to tip his hand to Ole Miss. The last that I heard was the term probable. Which is what, Coach Beamer has to put out now. The SEC mandates that you put out an injury report with some specifics. And the last word I've gotten is that both Raheem Sanders, Rocket Sanders, and Lenore Sellers are probable. I tend to believe they're actually better than probable. I think even those ankle injuries, and anybody that's had an ankle sprain knows how those can linger. You can re-injure them very easily. But also, you can probably, based on the severity, you probably get back on your feet in 2 weeks as well. I'll say this. I don't have any inside information, but I know that the line for the game went from Ole Miss -9.5, and some money came in on South Carolina and pushed it down to -9. I don't know anything, but it leads me to believe somebody does have information, and that money wouldn't have moved that way if Sellers and Sanders weren't ready to go.
Smitty, agree or disagree with my thought process this week of, South Carolina does have a chance, but the fact that Ole Miss is coming off of a loss, I've been worried that the Rebels are going to be focused coming into Columbia, almost business trip like-minded. Do you agree or disagree with that philosophy?
Oh, yeah. I think South Carolina is going to get Ole Miss's best shot, no doubt. If the Gamecocks pull the upset this week, and it would be an upset, the Gamecocks pull the upset, I guess, roughly 24 hours from now, it's not going to be because Ole Miss laid down. and laid an egg on the road. It's going to be because South Carolina matched up well with them, and more likely it's going to be that Kyle Kennard was a mismatch for the Ole Miss offensive line. If the Rebels have any weaknesses, and they don't have many, but if they have many weaknesses, it's that they aren't great on the offensive line and they aren't great on the back end defensively. Now, here's the question on South Carolina offensively. Are they good enough right now at the wide receiver position in that passing game to exploit that? Because everybody says, this is not me saying this, this is, analysts and coaches that review the films and see the all-22. They say, hey, there's plays to be made against this Ole Miss secondary. The question becomes now, is South Carolina good enough and can they protect well enough to make those plays? But you're right. You said business trip for Ole Miss. There's no question. Nobody at the beginning of this season thought Ole Miss was going to take, 2 losses before mid-October. So there's absolutely no reason to believe that Ole Miss won't give it their best shot tomorrow. If South Carolina wins, they'll earn it.
Smitty, do we know if they're going to let Juice Wells get one more free haircut from the stadium before he leaves Columbia this time?
Well, Coach Beamer was I'm going to say Coach Beamer is going to say no because when he was asked earlier this week in his press conference, I was sitting in there and we were all kind of waiting to see who would ask about Juice Wells. And I believe it was David Kleininger who from the Post and Courier who jumped on it and said, what do you think about Juice Wells? Oh, he said, let's play word association, Juice Wells. And Coach Beamer said, good football player, next question. He did not want to elaborate. He didn't want to talk about Juice Wells' time as a Gamecock. He didn't want to talk about that wild hair that Juice has or anything he said on social media on the way out the door. So I think behind closed doors, Shane Beamer might use that as a motivational technique. So no, as they say, no love lost there. Now, you don't know how the teammates feel because young people can usually speak more freely than management, right? So the players I don't know that they carry any ill will, but Coach Beamer did not want to discuss Antoine Juice Wells earlier this week.
Matt, what do you see as the recipe needed for South Carolina to pull off this upset win? 9-point dogs at the moment. I mean, it's hard to you can't really say that Ole Miss doesn't have better athletes basically across the board because they just simply do. But in your mind, what's the recipe? Is it a big momentum play like a pick six, a fumble recovery? Is it special teams block punts? Is it needing to play essentially a perfect game as far as penalties go? Where do you see that standing?
Well, I like that last one you mentioned because that's often not mentioned, right? Everybody breaks down the game and then they come up with a point spread and they feel like, well, this is what's going to happen. This will be the attitude. And then almost every football game comes down to 3 things: penalties, turnovers, and missed field goals. And those are just very difficult for us to project. How do you predict how that's going to go? But South Carolina has struggled with penalties this season. And I think that's a major one. That's a major factor. I think I would say maybe 3 things come to mind for me. We'll work backwards in the ones that are obvious to least obvious. But the most obvious one would be their defense has to keep doing what it's been doing. The defense just simply has to get pressure on Jackson Dart. End of story. There's no debate. Everybody would agree with that. Special teams, they probably need a play. They probably need one play, whatever it might be, maybe a long return. I don't think they've had a big-time return this season, and maybe they're due for one of those. And that's somewhere kind of that hidden yardage where they could get a leg up on a team, as you said, that's more talented. And to me, third down. And that one may be obvious too, but with third down, it kind of starts with first down. South Carolina is converting just 30% on third down this season. I'm gonna put them together, third and fourth down, because I think this game you're going to see some fourth down attempts from both teams. Lane Kiffin's coming off a game where Kentucky held the ball almost 2-1. He doesn't want that again. He may be more likely to go for it on fourth down than punt it and try to give it away to the other team so they can play keep away. And South Carolina, they know they can't put it right back in the hands of Jackson Dart if their defense is getting winded. So I think not only third down, but fourth down. But where does that start? That starts on first down. South Carolina, when they run the football on first down, they have to get yardage. They can't run up against that good Ole Miss defense and it be 2nd and 9. Ole Miss's defense is going to be too good if you're operating in 2nd and 9 and 3rd and 7 all day long. That's it. Rebels will win. So to me, the less obvious thing is watch first down. South Carolina has to stay ahead of the chains and stay on the field the way Kentucky did in order to beat Ole Miss.
Which would be the answer, Smitty, if South Carolina were to take down Ole Miss on Saturday? Would it be more about South Carolina, or in your opinion, would it be more about Ole Miss just not being who we thought they were?
Well, that might be true anyway. I think it's entirely possible that Ole Miss was overrated. That's possible. But I think both things can be true. I think it could be that, A, Ole Miss is not the team we thought they were when we were all making our predictions in August. But also, B, if South Carolina wins this game and you look at what they will have been through, including the close loss against LSU, including going on the road and winning an SEC game against Kentucky, and then they knock off Ole Miss in front of their home fans, can't be denied. At that point, South Carolina is a top 25 team. It's undeniable. You've got to put them in the top 25. So I think both can be true. South Carolina wins. There will be a narrative out there that Ole Miss lost to Kentucky and South Carolina, and those aren't big names. But then there's another side to that coin, which is South Carolina's legitimate.
Matt Smith joining us here on the Fan Upstate from SportsTalk Media Network. Let's flip over to the other game here in the state of South Carolina. Clemson on the road at Florida State. Florida State's defense has been kind of all over the place and consistent, oddly enough, to say both of those things about them in this season. You look at the first three games, they give up 24, 28, and 20, which sits right there at an average of 24 points. And in the last two games, they gave up 9 and 42 to Cal and SMU. Just how much of a field day do you predict this Clemson offense has against Florida State? I mean, is there any fight left in the Seminoles?
I don't know. It sure looked like there was a lot of quit in that team against SMU. But I think that's got to be concerning for Mike Norvell and anybody that's a Florida State fan. But you also wonder, maybe they feel like there's new life, that this is part 2 to the season now that young Lele, has got the broken hand and he's out. Maybe they rally around Brock Glenn, who frankly, a guy whose name I didn't know until like 2 days ago. Don't know what to tell you about Brock Glenn. Sounds like an accountant. I can't believe that Florida State is going into a ball game against Clemson and they don't have like a hot shot name at quarterback that we would all know, somebody that was like in the Elite 11 with Arch Manning. I don't think that's what Brock Glenn was. I don't think he's of that ilk, of that stature. But I've heard he's got some mobility. Well, that's good because he's going to be running for his life. And some of those numbers you mentioned, about Clemson having a field day against Florida State and what they do defensively. This might be their Alamo. If they're going to rally and have any kind of season, it would start this weekend. Doak Campbell, tough place to play. They would try to rally around their backup quarterback and do some special things. You're going to see them empty the toolbox, right? You might see double passes and double reverses and fake punts and anything else that Mike Norvell's got on the back of a cocktail napkin because they have to generate something. And after this game, this is their chance to pull a major upset. After this, then you're going to start hearing rumblings about the transfer portal and guys quitting on Mike Norvell and everything else. And I'm afraid that's actually where I would put my money. I actually think Clemson is just flat out too good this year. I think this Florida State team went to the portal, rolled the dice, and it didn't work out. And these guys have not meshed. And maybe I'll be wrong, but I think they're going to reach down deep, and Florida State's going to go for, try to throw everything they've got at Clemson, and it won't be nearly enough. I like the Tigers big.
Smitty, my last question for you. Earlier in the show, Diesel and I had the conversation about a statement made by a good friend of ours, good friend of the show, Lawton Swan of Clemson SportsTalk. Clemson, Lawton, is a Clemson media outlet, so it's obviously going to be biased towards Clemson. But he made a statement on the internet that we had on the show earlier today, and wanted to get your thoughts. Lawton said if it were for him as a Clemson guy, he would trade the 2 championships away, and he would also be fine with not having another championship under Dabo Swinney in this new landscape of college football if it meant Clemson didn't have to sell their soul to the 30% graduation rates and the muck of the NIL and the portal. Do you think that is a bad mindset to have if you're Clemson fans? Obviously, that's easier said now that you have won 2 in the last decade.
Yeah, when you start talking about trading in past championships, there's not a lot of skin in the game because you already celebrated those. But is Clemson willing to trade in the future championships? Now, look, I think there's a third way here. It doesn't have to be either or. I feel like Clemson can still have success in this era. Now, NIL is something different. But as far as the transfer portal goes, I really think a lot of that has been overblown. And look, this is it would be a nuanced conversation. I know we don't have time for it. But last year, Clemson's problem was twofold. One, Cade Klubnik just didn't click with the receivers he had. And 2, the receivers weren't very good that he had access to. Well, part of that was because Antonio Williams was hurt. Adam Randall was hurt. And then all of a sudden, how much better does the passing game look in Garrett Riley's second year with a healthy Antonio Williams, a healthy Adam Randall, and the freshman phenom, Bryant Wesco? It looks pretty good right now. Well, the reason and all those guys were recruited there and developed there at Clemson. So I'm not anti-transfer portal. I'm fine with the transfer portal. But I also think there's something to be said for development of players. The longer those players are there, the more evidence we'll have whether Dabo Swinney's way works or not. I think everybody panicking over the transfer portal last year was premature. That he shouldn't have gotten an A, a B, a C, or an F. He should have gotten an incomplete. Now we can really start to talk about Clemson and who they are. The defense looks pretty good. The wide receivers look good. Phil Maffa, Cade Klubnik, all these were recruited players. You have to give them time to develop. You don't win big every year. Ask Florida State. That's a team that had an undefeated regular season, and this year they're talking about firing the coach. That's the inconsistency you get if you live and die with the transfer portal. But by the way, I think there's a third way. You could just, it's okay to take 2 guys out of the portal too. There's no rule against that. You don't have to take 9. You don't have to take 0. You could just take 1 or 2 that you might need to fill in spots that fit in your culture. And I think that's where we're going to see Dabo Swinney in 2 years and 3 years. I think he'll dip his toe in the transfer portal. And if they get a game changer the way South Carolina did with Spencer Rattler, then he might change his mind a little bit. But you're never going to see, in my mind, Clemson going out there and doing an overhaul and just taking in a whole class from the transfer portal. It's not in Dabo Swinney's DNA.
Smitty, I want to touch on that just a little bit more, what you were saying there about Mike Norvell. Do you feel like he should be in any danger? Mostly because of what you said, his modus operandi has been live by the portal, die by the portal. He's in danger of losing this locker room if he hasn't already. He's in danger of losing half of this roster to the portal this year and to have to do it all over again because his 2025 class is not particularly great, number 35 in the country. I mean, is it a point? Do you think he's in danger by the end of this year or safe going into 2025 no matter what?
I think he's got to be safe, but what you said was very interesting. The fact that recruiting is not going well currently either, and that's one of the things to keep an eye on. I'm fascinated by what happens there. To me, it's somewhat analogous to what John Calipari went through at Kentucky, right? I mean, Kentucky was good under John Calipari every year. It can't be denied. But you saw these wild fluctuations as well. Even though they were always good, they weren't always championship material. And he couldn't build a culture because when you're one and done every single year and you don't know what's coming in next year, what happens if you miss on a couple of key guys, which is exactly what happened with Norvell. They don't have good quarterback play. So I think it's analogous to that. And what happened with Calipari, Kentucky fans it finally wore them out. Nobody would look at Calipari's win-loss record at Kentucky and say that's a guy that you'd want to run out of town. But it's not just that. It's the fact that it's up and down and new faces. It's like people are coming in and they're subletting apartments. You got to get to know new people all the time. And I think that's what Florida State fans are feeling right now. So do I think it happens next year? No. But Mike Norvell's got to look in the mirror and decide what he wants, what kind of coach he wants to be and what kind of culture he wants to build. You cannot build long-term stability in the transfer portal. That's not what it's for.
Smitty, great stuff as always. We appreciate you taking time to hop on with us, and have a great weekend wherever you are and whoever you may be covering. We'll talk to you next week.
I know I didn't crack as many jokes this week because, I'm just feeling for everybody that is up there. Some of the news coverage I'm starting to see out of, the foothills and the mountains, it brings me down. And so I'm glad you're doing the show the way you are. And anyway, I'm thinking about everybody up there because even though I live on the coast now, my heart is always in the upstate. And so anyway, that's why I was a little subdued this week, but I miss you guys and I wish everybody the best of luck up there.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Matt. Talk
Well
to you
said.
next week. When we come back, Cole, we got a couple of delinquent Tolos who haven't yet sent us their upset picks. So this is not last call, but this is like next to last call.
Getting close.
For your upset picks.
Getting close.
That's coming up next on the Fan Upstate. I got a big question for Dan B., our Tolo, who helps out so much when it comes to compiling and keeping all of these upset picks straight, because we have already far eclipsed the total number of unique Tolos we've ever had play this game. How many more new Tolos do we have playing this week? Because that's a goal, right? We always want to keep new people coming into the game. Unfortunately, Cole, we got a lot of quitters who will start playing the game, get to week 4 or 5 and be like, ugh, this isn't fun anymore.
I saw it.
And they stop playing. Yeah, you've threatened to quit. You can't quit.
Rob Brown quit.
You're paid to be here. Yeah,
and
Rob Brown.
Oh, we didn't call him. We need to call him.
Let's call him right now.
Let's
call him right now. Let's get Rob
Let's
Brown on the show.
Tolos, don't spoil it.
Right.
We're going to call him. We're going to put him through live. No, I'm not going to give him any warning. Hopefully there's no F-bombs or anything dropped, but we're going to call him and get his upset pick.
So we're looking for your upset picks right now. This is your second to last call, essentially, to get in your upset picks. We've had quite a few already on the show today. A few more just came through. But this is your second to last call to find a game on ESPN.com. That is the website we use to get our spreads. Go to ESPN.com. Find a game where you think the betting underdog is going to win the game outright. And if they do, you will get the points by which that team is an underdog added to a rolling season-long tally. You think you're good at it? You might be able to move up the leaderboard. You can get there. I know that it's week 6 going into the season. We only have about 6 or 7 weeks of the regular season. And of course, then bowl games after that, but you can still work your way high up on the leaderboard. Rob's probably taking a nap. He tried to call him. He didn't answer. He's like, it's Cole. It's Cole messing with me. I ain't answering this phone call.
He didn't answer.
If you think you can pick a couple of upsets through the end of the season, there's a chance that you end up pretty high up on this leaderboard, certainly higher than Cole, because he's down there.
That's easy. All you have to do
down
is
there
hit
in like
time.
the 40s or the 50s right now.
You have to hit once.
Yeah,
and you get me.
So find a game where you think the betting underdog is going to win, and then text us that game, your name, your game, and your spread to 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. For example, these Tolos know what's up. Brian Pettit texts in and said UCLA over Penn State plus 27 and a half.
Ooh.
Yowza. So Brian's going for the home run ball this week. Brian, I don't know where you are on the leaderboard, if you have any points at all at this point, but he is going for the home run ball. Very low likelihood that upset pick is going to hit. But if he does, if something crazy happens and UCLA upsets Penn State, my man is going to be sitting pretty inside the top 10 right now. Or you could take the slightly more conservative approach.
2.5.
Like Sheezy did. Sheezy is taking SMU plus 7 over Louisville. You hit a couple of those, and you're sitting right there inside the top 15 or 20 in this challenge. So shout out to Josh Pate, who got his in with me earlier today. He's taking Rutgers plus 7 over Nebraska. Styles wants Iowa plus 18.5 over Ohio State. Iowa's a good football team. Yeah. I think that line is way too high. And if I was a betting man putting money on this, I would put money on Iowa to cover. Maybe not win the game outright, but I would put on money on them to cover. Tolo Phil says he's taking South Carolina plus 9 over the Fighting Lane Kiffins. Kevin Buggs going with me. He wants Duke over Georgia Tech plus 9. Coach AJ wants Ball State plus 10 over Western Michigan. Ty Duncan 864 is going Stanford over Virginia Tech for 8.5. See, Justin L wants Baylor plus 13 at Iowa State. Roger Carper's going Duke plus 9 over Georgia Tech. A handful of them are still coming in on the text line, but those of you Tolos who have not gotten your picks in, there's no excuse for not getting your pick in. No excuse. Not even a hurricane, as a matter of fact. We're not even giving you that excuse.
Michael in Simpsonville just got power back. How about that, Michael?
We also saw that Lonzo just got his power back.
That's right.
I'm happy for Lonzo, man. He was fighting, man. He's out there in the woods. He's out there in the middle of
nowhere. Did you see Brendan Gosnell, fireman in the Citadel, 14.5?
Oh, my God. I mean, if there's a line on it, we're taking it.
There's not a line, surely, is there?
If there's a line on it, we're taking it. So just so you know.
I thought he was joking. Is there? I have to look
but
and
see,
if there is
that's one of the fun things about using ESPN.com now for our spreads, which we've always used ESPN.com.
Yeah,
but they have now kind of gone hardcore into the betting on their website.
Yeah,
this was not the case last year, but now there's a lot of games where there otherwise would not have been a spread.
ESPN Bet
that there is a spread on now. They're usually used to be you couldn't get the FCS over FBS matchups. But hey, if you feel good about an elite FCS to go win and beat a FBS, like you wouldn't have been able to play North Dakota State, Colorado last year, but they have since made that change, and you can do that. So
I am this weekend. I am a fighting Boilermaker more than I've ever been in my entire life. I have picked Purdue to upset Wisconsin. I don't think it's going to happen. Purdue's 1-3, Wisconsin's 2-2. Both of them are 0-1 in the Big Ten. Wisconsin's a 12.5-point favorite at home. Look, I said yesterday, I've got to play catch up. That's what I'm simply trying to do here. I'm trying to play catch up, but I do have an interesting question for you, Diesel. 2 big spreads, and I believe we've seen one of them come in, but we haven't seen the other. The 2 games that I'm curious about, either or. If I told you, Diesel, that one of these 2 games, the underdog is going to win, right? Upset picks challenge. We've had a few texters, a few Tolos pick Iowa over Ohio State. I'm going to give you Iowa, Ohio State, and I'm also going to give you Georgia, Auburn. Of the 2 games, Iowa at Ohio State and Auburn at Georgia, these are both 18-plus point spreads. Of the 2, if I told you one of them involved an upset, outright winner, which would you choose?
Between which 2 games again?
Iowa, Ohio State, and Auburn, Georgia.
Auburn, Georgia. I think Georgia is very vulnerable right now. I think Georgia's a good football team. They're a by all measures, they are a top 15 football team, top 10 football team. Yeah. But I don't think there's just something missing from them this year. I don't know what it is, or that just everybody else around them has gotten better. But I think if I had to put money on that one, I would take Auburn upsetting Georgia.
Texter says Lonzo needs to do an upset pick now that his power's on. Thank you guys for keeping us laughing and smiling during this time. Tolo, whoever you are, that's what we do. We keep you laughing, keep you smiling, keep this show going because it has been a tough week, man. It really has, but that's what we're here for, to keep your spirits up and just get through this thing one day at a time. And Lonzo's not going to make an upset pick. When's Lonzo ever been involved with anything outside of his job responsibility in terms of another show? That's not going to happen. Lonzo doesn't even listen to other sports shows, so he's not going to make it up. He don't even know what an upset pick challenge is, I bet. If I asked him, I bet he'd say no.
So Dan B says that we have had 3 new players this week. That's good. I'd rather have more like 10 new players every single week. Again, texters, Tolos, those of you who are just finding this show, even if you've never been in this challenge before, it's still fun, whether you're scoring or not. Well, ask Cole. It's not fun if you're not scoring, but it's still possible for you to make your way up the leaderboard, because as we look at our leaderboard right now, the top 30 picks, the top 30 Tolos, down at the bottom of that 30 list. You got Dion, Billy, who called in yesterday, Tigerville Bo, Brandon Gosnell, and Ty Duncan 864. They all have 14.5 points. So see how that works? You could pick an 8-point spread this week and a 7-point spread next week, and boom, you're up there with those guys in the top half. Though. If you want to see the standings, just go to our Twitter page, The Fan Upstate. We have a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't have Twitter. I can't look at it." You don't have to have Twitter to view a tweet. So just go to x.com/thefanupstate, and it is pinned to the top of our page. You don't have to have a Twitter to go see the standings, but that's where we put it, on Twitter at the Fan Upstate.
I was looking through this week when we started the upset picks, probably on Monday. I was looking through the slate of games, and I don't know. I could be wrong here. But I don't know if I can recall a slate of games in the month of October in my lifetime that's as bad of a slate of games as we have this weekend. I mean, it's just bad. We don't have really good matchups this weekend.
But is this the weekend where could this be the freaky weekend?
It could be.
It always is.
Hopefully so, because
it felt like we had that last
week.
week, right? It felt like we had that last week with Ole Miss getting beat, with Miami almost getting beat. It felt like we had that.
Well, I hope so, because the way it looks right now, it doesn't look great.
There we go. Now we got a lot of Tolos catching on. The time is running out. Remember, we stopped getting these. We stopped taking these at 7:00 on Fridays. Madcraft finally got his win. His
Panther boy,
yep.
Grandpa Bucky. Let's see.
Remember, Tolos. This is something that we ran into yesterday.
Yeah.
Remember and make sure that when you sign your text, you sign it the same way every time, because we had 3 different bills on the list. And if we don't know, we're not comparing phone numbers. We don't go back and cross reference. So if you want to text in and say, this is Bill from Malden, you got to text in as Bill from Malden every single time.
Eric in Spartanburg says, give him Wake minus 4.5 over NC State.
I think that's the first person who's made that selection.
Is it?
Yeah.
You know what? It doesn't sound familiar. T-Ray, Beavis and Butthead, ha, ha, ha. He said score. Score. Michael of Simpsonville, whoever the Hurricanes of Miami, Tulsa, or Tulane are playing, Hurricanes suck. After this week.
Tulane aren't the Hurricanes. Tulsa are the Golden Hurricane.
What's Tulane?
Tulane's the Green Wave.
Well, I guess it still counts.
I think it's that dirty Gulf water. That's what a Green Wave is.
Gulf water's great. I love Gulf water.
In and around New Orleans?
Oh, no. I'm talking about like Destin.
Yeah.
Florida Gulf water. Sorry. Let me clarify. I agree, Michael and Simpson. All right. Last night we saw history, Diesel. We'll get into that next. I know we've talked a lot about Michael Penix. We've talked a lot about Kirk Cousins just not being the guy, but all signs showed us last night that Kirk Cousins is the guy. We'll get into that next. There's been a lot of talk about Kirk Cousins and if he's going to be good enough to actually please the Atlanta Falcons fans. However, 42 of 58, 509 yards and 4 touchdowns with a QBR of 114.8. Diesel, it might be good enough. I don't know if I jinxed it. The other day we were talking about passing being down league-wide, and Kirk Cousins says, I'll take care of that.
What was that number you gave? His completions?
42 of 58.
Compare that to Jared Goff going 18 of 18.
That's what I'm saying.
Earlier this past week. Unbelievable, the different styles of play.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot. I mean, he threw the ball 58 times. I don't know the last time we had a quarterback. Joe Burrow threw for 525 on December 26, 2001. Ben Roethlisberger did it one time, 501. Dak Prescott did it once. But there's not, that many times, man. Almost 60 times. To your point, I don't know. Bijan Robinson is a good running back. He only had 12 carries last night. Bijan Robinson, if you have him in fantasy, it might be time to trade him away, right? Because he's not getting the rock.
And, a lot of times, if you don't see games like that in the NFL very often, right? Because two teams should be relatively equal as far as talent goes. You're all professionals at this point. But if you ever have big games like that with blowouts like that, you sit the quarterback. You take him out so he's not in. But when you have a 36-30 football game like that, you got to leave your starters in the whole time, and they're just slinging the ball all over the field.
Just slinging it. Kirk Cousins completed 42 of 58, which, by the way, is history. His 500-yard passing game was just 25th in NFL history, and he became only the 22nd different quarterback to achieve that feat. So there's a couple of quarterbacks that have done it twice. But Diesel, that's fantastic. The question now is Kirk Cousins, obviously he's older, he has to stay healthy, all that goes into it. But the biggest storyline out of the draft was what happens to Michael Penix Jr. and how long until he takes over. Excuse me. Now, Diesel, I don't even know if that's a conversation to be had.
Well, trade him to Carolina, would you?
Wow, that'd be nice.
They're going to need him to play. And it's not like you're really trading an asset to a division rival because you didn't play him.
Yeah.
Right? He hadn't played much. Magcraft is swelling with pride because Kirk Cousins got him 34 points last night for his fantasy teams. So you could say that his team, the Riley Reid option, scored big last night.
I just missed like 54 messages. I was scrolled up on the stream like an hour ago, and I was like, man, nobody's messaging. And I just scrolled down and see like 58. Yeah, it helps when you actually scroll down.
Let's see. Fat Paid texted in and said, I have Cousins in fantasy on my bench. Worst 70 points I ever missed.
Fat Paid, what are you doing there, buddy? The question is, Fat Paid, who just start over Kirk Cousins? Because if he had a big day, still 70 points. And last night, Drake London, 154 yards receiving, 12 catches. Darnell Mooney, 9 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 105 yards. Their top 3 receivers, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, and Drake London, all averaged 10-plus yards per reception. Ray McLeod from Clemson even got in on the action last night, 6 receptions for 66 yards. Diesel, when you look now at the NFC South and Europe, what happened?
Fat Paid's newest text message.
I hadn't seen it. Thanks, Cole. Oh, can't read that. Can't read that.
Dak bleeping Prescott and Lamar Jackson is who Fat Paid started this week.
That's bad.
Ooh.
Before we run, when you look at the NFC South now, between the Falcons, Bucks, Saints, and Panthers, is this now, in your opinion, the Falcons' division to lose?
They're looking really good, and Kirk Cousins is clearly the best quarterback in this
And the Saints have
division.
cooled off a little bit.
Yes, they have. Cole, when we come back, it is time for our weekend menu. We'll go time slot by time slot. Looking at this not from a local perspective, because that's easy. We basically talk about this every single day from a local perspective, but nationally speaking, what is the tastiest game in each time slot tomorrow? Our weekend menu coming up next. Cole, I know we plan on doing our weekend menu here, but this is something really important that I want to interject and get to before we get to that.
Yeah.
So you and I have both seen a considerable amount of misinformation out on social media in the wake of Hurricane Helene. There's a lot of people who are spreading all kinds of theories and saying they're not sending funding to this area because they vote this way. And there's just a lot of that happening right now. And we just received a press release that I want to share out there to anybody who may have concerns about the way this Hurricane Helene relief has been handled. This comes directly from FEMA. They're talking about the rumor that FEMA does not have enough money to provide disaster assistance for Helene. They say this is completely false. They have enough funds for immediate response and recovery needs. Everything they need to fund, they have funding for. Second rumor that FEMA will only provide $750 to disaster survivors to support their recovery. That is false. The type of assistance you need is approved on a case-by-case basis. It is not a capped amount. It is a flexible payment to help you cover essential items like food, water, baby formula, breastfeeding supplies, medications, and other emergency supplies as well. Rumor number 3 is that FEMA is asking for cash donations and turning away volunteers. That is false. They do not ask for or accept any cash donations or volunteers. This is all funded by the government, and it is all staffed by the government. They do not accept cash donations. They do not ask for volunteers. Another rumor saying that funding has been diverted to support international efforts or border-related issues. That is false. No money is being diverted from disaster response needs to go anywhere else. This money comes from a different pool of funding. And the last rumor that I want to get to is that they are stopping vehicles and confiscating donations meant for survivors. FEMA does not take donations or food from survivors or voluntary organizations. They handle everything internally themselves. They do not stop and take things away from other people. So that's definitely worth sharing, Cole, because there's been a lot of people sharing some false narratives out there in the wake of this. It's sad to see. I'm not surprised that we see it, but it is very, very sad to see that when it happens in the wake of a big event like this. So let's get to our weekend menu.
And real
Cole.
quick, before you do, I want to get some breaking news in terms of South Carolina Gamecock football. 2 minutes ago, South Carolina lands 4-star wide receiver in their backyard from Ridgeland. Jordan Gitterin has committed to South Carolina, 4-star wide receiver, the number 1 in his class. So just breaking 2 minutes ago on 3 Sports Recruits, reporting that, again, Jordan Gitterin, 4-star recruit right in the backyard of the Gamecocks, chooses to stay home and go to the Gamecocks.
That is huge. You compile that, Cole, with the I don't know if you remember who the player was. There was a 4-star wide receiver coming out of Rock Hill that was committed to Florida State, who has since decommitted. They'll know where he plans on going now, if he's made that decision or if he's leaning a certain way. But, man, if South Carolina could put up a wall around this state and not let the best players get out, man, they'd be big. They'd be doing really, really well for themselves. So let's get here into our weekend menu. This is our lineup of the tastiest games on the docket this weekend. And we're looking at it not from a local perspective, not from a state of South Carolina perspective, but a national 10,000-foot view, Cole. What is the tastiest game in each time slot if you could only watch one? Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's a little more difficult. So let's go to the noon time slot tomorrow, the appetizer time slot. You got UCLA at number 7, Penn State. You've got number 9, Missouri at number 25, Texas A&M, and Louisville at number 22, Louisville, hosting SMU. On a national scale, which one are you ordering off the menu?
It's a good appetizer. It could be better. It could be worse, though, when you look at these 3 games, Diesel. UCLA, Penn State, like Penn State being in the top 10 is always going to be intriguing to the nation. It's going to be a national storyline. However, UCLA is not good. I don't think that game will be close. I expect Penn State to roll there. SMU, Louisville, and Missouri A&M are the two games that I look at in that noon time slot. And I said it earlier, Diesel, I don't think this is the best weekend slate of games ever, but I do think this noon o'clock slate's not bad. I almost chose SMU Louisville. However, I'm not. I'm going to choose Missouri A&M, not only because it's a top 25 matchup, but because we're going to find out, in my opinion, if Missouri's for real. They have not, in this season, 2024, Diesel, they've not looked impressive. They've gotten by teams, right? A&M is favored at home by 2.5 points. You know what? I think Missouri should win this game. And if I had to pick them right now, I'd probably pick them too. But this game, to me, not just in the noon time slot, is one of the more intriguing games of the entire weekend. So with that appetizer spot at noon, I'm going Missouri A&M.
Yeah, UCLA, Penn State, just because it's UCLA, traveling across country to play a top 10 Penn State, it has some value to it, Cole. It smells good, but when you look at it, you're like, I don't know. SMU Louisville is actually a sneaky good football game because the ACC, as of right now, is still kind of a 4-horse race to see who's going to make it to Charlotte. It's between Miami, Clemson, Louisville, and SMU. I think this is a de facto knockout game for one of these two teams to potentially kind of put them too far out. And Louisville certainly has the ability to knock SMU out of that race. And, obviously both Clemson and Miami face Louisville in the coming weeks. So I think that one is really, really interesting, but it doesn't hold as much weight as Missouri, Texas A&M. By rights, I think this game probably should be more like a 15-19 matchup, not a 9-25 matchup. However, you're right. We're going to find out if Missouri is an actual contender or a pretender, and I think we're going to learn that Missouri is not who we thought they were going to be. I think A&M is going to win this game at home.
I'm with you. That was the one I chose. I will say, though, Notre Dame beating Louisville last weekend, I was not impressed. And I know Louisville came back at the end and made it closer than it was, than the game really was. But Louisville with one loss already, you said it. It could be the knockout punch. What is intriguing about that game is if SMU could knock off Louisville's chances in Charlotte are toast. Like, they've got Louisville, the problem with their schedule, and you said it, they've got a tough schedule coming up. They can't make mistakes anymore.
But if Louisville loses to a game SMU, and then somehow would find a way to beat both Clemson and Miami, now they're certainly back into the picture.
But that ain't happening.
That's not happening. All right, let's move on to our main course, our 3:30 slate of games. You only get to pick one of these, Cole. I'm rolling out a cart, and you're going to pick one off of the cart. Iowa at number 3, Ohio State. Auburn at number 5, Georgia. Or number 12, Ole Miss at South Carolina. I know how the sandlappers here in this state are going to feel about this, but we're talking about this from a national perspective.
National perspective. You're right. It is a national perspective, and I don't know why I have gone the entire week now, Diesel, and thought to myself that Ole Miss Carolina is a noon game. I've thought that all week long. I even planned I wouldn't be able to make it tomorrow because it's a noon game. However, it's not. It's 3:30, and I'm just now realizing that. That's my mistake. My bad there. This one's interesting. Obviously, the Carolina Ole Miss game is going to have its interest because of the local perspective. I would love Iowa versus Ohio State to be competitive. I really would. But I watched Ohio State the entire game last weekend. They're good. They're really, really good. They can sleepwalk their way through games. They did that against Michigan State on Saturday. They've got one of the best. I know Ryan Williams at Alabama is the best freshman 17-year-old in the country, but Ohio State has the best 18-year-old in the country at wide receiver. They're that good. I don't think in the second half, Diesel, Iowa and Ohio State will be a good game. So for that reason, I don't like Auburn. I think they suck, and I think their head coach sucks. I'm going Gamecocks and Rebels, man. 3:30 main course right here in Columbia.
I just saw a tweet earlier today that Hugh Freeze just landed his quarterback of the future. I don't know who he is.
Oh, God.
I don't know
Cam
who
Newton?
he is. Yeah. But Auburn, I think Auburn's going to be a force to be reckoned with next year. This year, maybe not quite as compelling. I think the eyes of the nation are going to be on Columbia this week. I don't think a lot of people know that South Carolina is as good as they are, but I think Lane Kiffin by himself is a walking, talking headline, and having him on the road, his first true road game this year in the SEC, I think that one is really, really compelling. So I'm going to go with you again as Ole Miss, South Carolina. I know. You ever see those couples who go to a restaurant and order the exact same thing? It's weird.
It is weird.
It's weird to watch them do that. So we got one more main course here to go with. Actually, it's the dessert course, the 7:00 slate of games. Asking you, Cole, and the Tolos, what is the most compelling of these matchups in the 7:00 time slot? You got number 15 at Clemson at Florida State, number 4 Tennessee at Arkansas, and number 10 Michigan at Washington.
I like this time slot. I like it. I really do. I like it a lot. What's fascinating, Diesel, Washington is favored at home over Michigan. The line has dropped, though. The line's dropped now to 1.5. So basically, this thing's a wash. Vegas thinks, in my opinion, this is a coin flip game. Vegas isn't wrong much, but I do sense, Diesel, that Vegas is saying right now, we have no idea. We have no idea what between Washington.
Michigan's got no offense. They got a great defense, no offense.
I know. Clemson, Florida State's going to be good for the first quarter. I'm going Tennessee, Arkansas. And again, I apologize. We may be picking the same one for the third straight time on the dessert side here at 7:00. But you know what? We talk about redemption stories. Let's just say Sam Pittman pulled this out of his you-know-what. Would this not be the all-time redemption story for Sam Pittman and the Razorbacks?
I do agree with you on that one. I think it's going to end up being a blowout. I think Tennessee is gonna mark their territory all over. Yeah.
Oh man.
Smokey is gonna go and relieve himself on the Razorback logo at the 50. Now, I think the most interesting game here is Michigan at Washington from a national perspective, because we're still trying to figure out what this Michigan team is. And you look at that spread, and it sort of makes you scratch your head a little bit, and it makes you say, I got to figure out why this is such a
I'm with you there.
Game, right? It's like when a TV show goes viral at the beginning, people are tuning in to figure out why everyone's talking about it so much. So I'm going to go Michigan at Washington, and the late night slate of games, Cole, the late night snack. Maybe you took home a doggy bag, you got a little bit left, you want to go munch on. Not a lot of options here. So I think it's pretty easy what we're going to do, what we're both going to go with. Correct. But you got number 8 Miami at Cal, and then Texas Tech at Arizona. Which one interests you?
Well, I want to see Miami lose. I want to see Miami lose. I don't think they're going to. Sorry, Madcraft. They looked terrible last week. I want to see Miami. Look, now all of a sudden, Diesel, Miami has entered the territory of fraud alert. I'm sorry. Ooh. They have. They have entered fraud alert territory. They got bailed out. The entire upstate missed it because of the hurricane. They got bailed out the other night because of the reception review play in the end zone, or the referees handed them the game. I know that they'll beat Cal, but I'm going Miami Cal here.
By the way, the player that we were talking about is Deuce Knight. Deuce Knight has flipped his commitment from Notre Dame to Auburn, and that is a big deal. Yeah. And I like your reasoning there on Miami Cal. We're going to find out for sure what happened last week to Miami. Do they have serious deficiencies, or was it just one of those crazy games? And hey, great teams find ways to survive.
Sure.
Even when they don't play their best. That's what makes a great team a great team. You win even when you don't play well. And that's the situation Miami found themselves in last week. Cal is game. Definitely want to watch this one to find out for sure. You're going to be up late watching this game. We call it a midnight snack, a late night snack. That's because you're going to be up till midnight or beyond, probably more like 1 a.m. to finish watching this ball game.
So I'm going to flip it back to you before we close the weekend menu. Let's go to tonight's games. We've got 4 games tonight.
We do.
Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State's been welcomed.
Pillow fight of the week.
Well, they've been welcomed. I mean, they've been baptized by fire, right? They're 0-4 now. They're playing big boy football.
Yep.
Houston, TCU, Michigan State, Oregon, and Syracuse, UNLV tonight. I'm telling you, not a bad Friday night for football because the upstate, we don't have high school football tonight, so we get some college. If you had to pick one of the four tonight, which one are you going with?
I think Kennesaw State is saying we might have made a mistake leaving the Shire, Pippin. We might have should have stayed as an FCS team. That's not compelling at all. Collectively, one win between the teams. Houston sucks. I think Syracuse UNLV is really interesting. Not because I think it's going to be a close football game. I think Syracuse is going to blow them out. But I think a lot of people want to rally behind UNLV, and they want to see just how good this team is. So I'm going to go with Syracuse UNLV as my most compelling game of the night.
I like it. I'd go Michigan State, Oregon. I watched Michigan State last week. They weren't good, but
Michigan State's being given a 7.5% chance to win this football game. That's absurd.
But Oregon hasn't looked the part at times this year. I want to see if Oregon looks the part.
And what's going on? Somebody help me out. I have not found the reasoning why UNLV still has a 79.5% chance to win this football. Did Kyle McCord break his leg?
It's because they're in Vegas. Vegas likes UNLV. They're
trying to juice it a little bit.
Team.
I understand.
All right, that is that's good though. For a bad weekend, I did find some good games in there. So I appreciate you offering me those nice meals as we are getting to 5:20. We're going to take a break in just a few minutes, but first let's go to the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone. Tom wants to chime in. What's up, Tom?
Hey guys, it's Friday and we got football on tonight. But first off, y'all talked about Deuce Night. I mean, I really don't care about Auburn, but at the same time, they better not be relying on a freshman to come in there and fix their problems because they got a lot of problems and a freshman ain't gonna fix that. And neither is Hugh Freeze. Now, Cole, you mentioned Miami and Cal. Here's the thing in that game. Miami should win the game, okay? But if they play like they did last week, if they have 3 or 4 turnovers again, Cal will beat Miami. And Cal's defense is very good. They're slipped on, but the offense is terrible. So if Miami starts turning the ball over again, we could be up till 1 a.m. watching an upset. Now, y'all mentioned UNLV tonight. Don't sleep on this Williams kid at quarterback. The dude is better than the guy they had. He's better. So it's going to be a great game. But obviously, I got to say this about the Gamecocks. Last week, can y'all tell me what Juice Wells did?
Not much.
0 catches and 0 yards, okay? Expect the same thing tomorrow. Beamer and the boys are going to be ready, and it is going to be a fun Saturday afternoon in Columbia as the Gamecocks will upset Ole Miss. Sandstorm will be blasting through the early morning hours of Sunday. The Gamecocks will be 4-1, and they'll still have a better record than the sorry Clemson Tigers. Go Gamecocks. I hope y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Thank you, Tom. Woo. Take some blood pressure medication.
How red do you think his face is right now?
I love it. I love it.
Keep
calling in.
It is good, man. We appreciate you, Tom. All right, we're going to talk to Scott Early, former high school football coach in the Upstate, now executive director of South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association. Next, a very interesting story developing in the Upstate with Hurricane Helene, high school football in the Upstate. Some teams missing 2 weeks now, and the high school league dragging their feet on making a decision on if they're going to postpone the season. Diesel, Scott Early, who, again, is the executive director of the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association, wrote an open letter to the high school league yesterday. We'll get his thoughts and dive into that next. Rolling along here in hour number 3 of the program. So good to be with you on this Friday as we are getting back to what we call normal, one step at a time. Our thoughts and prayers are still going out to those affected a lot worse than we were up in Western North Carolina. Want to go back to the phones now and bring in Scott Early, the executive director of the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association. Scott, it's a shame that we're talking to you today about this. Obviously, with weather impacting the future schedules potentially of the upstate teams that were affected. Everyone in the upstate that follows high school football knows that high school football hadn't happened for 2 weeks now, and you wrote an open letter to the high school league and Jerome Singleton yesterday. Thanks so much for hopping on with us. Just talk about the letter that you wrote so our listeners who aren't familiar with it can get caught up on it.
Well, first of all, let me correct you right quick. Aiken County is actually, their team's playing the lower state this year, and I talked to some officials at Aiken County this morning. They may not even be back in school for 2 to 3 weeks, and that's down in the Edgefield area also.
Yeah.
So this is not just the, western part of the state deal. It's not just we've got communities. We have schools still without power or water. So it's a little more, I think, extensive, but no, it's just, on Sunday, I've lived all over the state in my coaching tenure and, from the Grand Strand PD area to the Midlands to here. And, going through this and seeing the devastation, you think about it, Hugo's the largest natural disaster our state's ever seen. There was 35 people killed. Today we're already up to 69. So I just assumed that there was going to be maybe a little bit more sense of urgency maybe. So I, in my role, and I have over 8,000 members, coaches, and athletic directors all over the state. And, starting on, I don't know, I think Monday morning, the calls started to come, the voice messages, the text, and it's sort of my job to be an advocate for our coaches and our athletes in the state, and but also respect the authority and leadership of the high school league. A lot of people don't know that's the body, meaning the 269 schools in the state, has chose for a long time to give the high school league the autonomy and authority to regulate and govern without bias. So, that's sort of our choice, and they actually work for the members of the league. So it's one of those things where I just felt like it was my obligation and charge, and also now living in Upper State and being a part of what's going on and having friends through relationships you build in coaching and teaching, over 30 years, and just listening and trying to be understanding and empathetic. And then, then when it got to the point where, that I was finding out things from the media, I just decided to post a statement, and I, I'm old school, and, I don't even have social media, but I do have people that do, and people that are very good at doing it for me. And I just thought, hey, it's time for somebody to speak up on behalf of the 8,000 members of the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association. So I don't know if that answered your question. I hope it did.
Scott Early, Executive Director of the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association. Scott, thanks for taking the time with us today. I want to preface what I'm going to ask you by saying that I completely agree with you, and I do believe that this would be the right move by the high school association. But what in your mind is a major hurdle to just canceling those games and not making them up at all? Well,
I've talked to a lot of coaches and athletic directors and administrators also from the eastern part of the state, where basically, I'm not a statistician, but basically east of Columbia, everybody's okay to play. And for years, being a coach in the state and athletic director and serving in many roles, I've always, when something hits the beach or the PD or the Grand Strand or the Low Country, everybody else pauses out of respect and says, hey, but again, on the flip side of that, what people may sometimes miss is when you I'll use an analogy of, when it snows in Michigan, they don't close schools. They're used to it. And on the Grand Strand and Low Country, when devastation comes, they're prepared. Their soil, their foliage, their leadership, their emergency responders, their crisis management teams, it's old hat to them. The upper state, with our foliage and our soil and our saturation before the 80-mile-an-hour winds, we've never experienced anything like this. And I just don't think that – I think that this is unforeseen circumstances that were difficult for any leadership to deal with just because it was unprecedented. So, with that being said, I'm not, as they say in the new world, I'm not throwing shade or talking bad about anybody. I'm just saying I just don't think there's a clear understanding of we still have public high schools that don't have power and water, and we still have some of our athletes helping in our community and others walking down to the Lowe's to get 1 gallon of water per family member per day. And I still have coaches that drive to Walmart or Home Depot to get enough signal on a phone to call me and ask me for help. So I just don't think the direness of the situation has even arrived yet. I thought with the flooding coming, that would help a little bit, but now I'm hearing we've got a meeting maybe next Tuesday, but with this many games canceled, 29 of these games that's canceled did not even play last week. So you're already 2 weeks behind. And in 2016, we had this similar situation with the eastern part of our state, and we were able to do this for everybody to play through. And again, this is, I know football is the cash cow and it drives everything in the world, but our other sports, volleyball, golf, tennis, cross country, swim, all these events, they're used to competing 2 to 3 times a week. So now you're talking about, let's just use Pickens, for example. They have a predominantly year in, year out dominant volleyball program. Well, Pickens is a disaster, and those children there, those athletes and coaches, would have to play 4 to 5 games a week for the next 3 weeks just to meet region qualifiers. So I just thought, I don't know, I'm sort of into preventing problems, not trying to solve them. So that's what prompted me to try to, for lack of a better term, do my job, to be honest with you.
Yeah. We're talking to Scott Early. He is the executive director of the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association. Scott, we know that the South Carolina High School League has the executive board that will ultimately make this decision. And just for those listening out there that don't know, tomorrow morning on the Saturday Scramble, my 2-hour high school football show, we will be joined by Jerome Singleton at 9 a.m., who is the commissioner of the South Carolina High School League, just to provide some updates, if any, on what will happen going forward. You mentioned maybe a meeting next Tuesday, Scott, with the high school league. The executive committee has to make that decision. You would think that 2016, when you brought it up, when we paused here for 2 weeks, I believe that the season was pushed back. And if I'm not mistaken, Scott, we paused 1 week before the end of the regular season. We played the last regular season game, and then we paused another week and had another bye after the regular season, and then we started the playoffs the following week. So you would think that, I don't know the executive committee, how much rotation and change, but you would think, Scott, my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong here, that because they made the decision in 2016, they'd give the same grace to the upstate.
I would hope so, and I side on the side of caution to say maybe the sense of urgency is because these are obviously unforeseen circumstances in what we call Western South Carolina. So there's no, I don't think there's any ill will or malice involved at all. I think it's just, something that we've never had to deal with before and react to. And, and everybody has their own, not hidden agenda, but where you do what's best for your school. Like, how does this help us win the region? Has it not? How does it help our qualifiers? But at the end of the day, there's, the purpose should be the betterment of the student athletes and coaches, and to be out to, to have some understanding for, hey, we got lucky this time. However, in the past, when y'all have got lucky, which y'all's a slang term, but it's a true term, it's been okay. So that was maybe the confusing part to me.
Scott, I would certainly look at this as an opportunity for coaches, especially in the lower part of the state, to possibly involve their teams in service projects to help out here in the upstate. Certainly life lessons there. I know you can't request that all those coaches do that with their student athletes. But as Cole was telling me off the air before he came on with you, the decisions that have been made in North Carolina and Georgia, respectively, to do the same thing, to push their seasons back a little bit. Do you believe those decisions in those states would have any effect on the way the South Carolina High School League would lean?
Well, first of all, let me go back right quick. Georgia's got an easier situation because they are really forward thinking, and they built a bye week into their entire schedule. So they sort of prepare for this. If they need it, we'll use it. If not, so they're a little bit ahead of the game. So when they made that decision, I think, Dr. Singleton and High School League maybe caught us some criticism for that. However, they had already had a week built in, and North Carolina obviously is a elongated, much larger state than ours, and Western North Carolina, sort of where I grew up in the Lake Lower area and up, received the toughest damage. So I think they can sort of segment it out, where South Carolina is a small state, and I think we just have to, through relationships and goodwill, just have to work it out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And based on what obviously you have your opinion, you put it in the open letter. My last question for you, Scott, what do you think will happen?
Well, I think that, I hope that it's seriously considered on Tuesday, but I still believe that Tuesday's maybe a week too late, with considering, you're going to have teams in the eastern part of the state that are 2-3 games ahead of the western part of the state, depending on whether if you moved your game up the previous week to Thursday or Wednesday to avoid Helene. We've got 29 schools that did not do that. So you're going to have probably, roughly 29 to 35 schools that are going to be 3 weeks behind, some that's going to be 2 weeks behind, some even in the Columbia area 1 week behind. So I think what do we want out of this in the end? What's the end game? We want our kids and our schools and our communities to get back on their feet, and we want to go back to the prideful way of interscholastic athletics in the state of South Carolina, create a even playing field, and be able to celebrate the playoffs and the All-Star games and Christmas, and look back on this with unity and resilience and see just how we were able to come together and put each other's in common differences down to come together for a greater cause. That would be my hope.
And Scott, I think you did touch on this earlier in the in our little chat here, but I want to ask one more time for those who may be tuning in the second half of this interview. You guys have a meeting set on Tuesday. Is Tuesday the time when all perspectives and pleas will be officially delivered to the high school league, or does a decision have to be made on Tuesday?
Well, to be honest with you, Colt, I can't answer that question. All I have to draw off of is that the exec committee will meet either by Zoom or in person and discuss the possibilities of either moving back or suspending the season. The outcome of that is unknown at this point. I just feel like we missed an opportunity to get ahead of this thing. And a lot of people think, well, that's a knee-jerk reaction, but those people that are thinking that have not drove through the communities of Strong Thurman, Newberry, Pickens, Oconee, Anderson, Greenwood, Greenville, Spartanburg, Gaffney. I've actually spoken with those people since this horrific event occurred. So I think, public perception is reality, and I hope that on Tuesday we can get it right. But in my role now, I'm just here to support and be an advocate for our membership for the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association and our student athletes and everybody involved. And I'm sure, like everything else, this will work out for the betterment of all. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the high school league exec committee, our legislators, our super talented superintendents, principals, athletic directors. I'm already getting adaptive region scheduling, and these people are very, very intuitive and very resilient, and they're the people on the ground, and they're the experts, and our job and probably your job is just to support them and pray for them. So,
Scott, we appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully, to your point, it gets worked out for the best.
Thank you, Cole, for having me on. It's a privilege. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That's Scott Early. He is very involved, obviously, as with his role. He's the executive director of the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association. So, Diesel, we'll see. Now it all comes down to does the high school league executive committee, whenever they meet, whether it's Tuesday or whatever day, do they do the right thing?
I mean, this feels like a no-brainer decision.
It does.
And
that's why it scares you.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes when you have no-brainer situations, these pleas are just kind of landing on deaf ears. I remember, granted, I wasn't there when this happened, obviously, but the question about whether Marshall could play freshmen immediately following the plane crash that took their entire team. If you don't let them play freshmen, they're not going to have a team at all. And the NCAA was very, very rigid on their decision-making at that time. So you just hope that the South Carolina High School League does the right thing and takes the easy win. This would be an easy win for the South Carolina High School League. And I know you and I have talked about them off the air and on the air a couple different times. And sometimes the decisions that they make kind of leave you scratching your head just a little bit.
And a quick reminder, the commissioner of the high school league, Jerome Singleton, will join me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Hopefully we'll get some answers from him.
Take the easy win, would you?
That's right.
When we come back, Cole, let's hit our daily wires. We'll whip around the sports world, see what else is happening out there. That's next on 97.7 FM in Greenville, 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, and everywhere you are on the free Odyssey app. A lot happening out there in the sports world, Cole. Let's check it all out right now in our Daily Wires. This is the buzz happening out there. Well, I don't have my big headphones on. I have my little in-ears.
Yeah.
So I thought I still heard you do the buzz
Well,
through the headphones.
You did.
But I didn't. Oh, okay. So you didn't mess up after all.
No.
Wow, congratulations to you. Thursday Night Football went into overtime last night as the Falcons defeated the Bucs 36-30. Both teams are now sitting at 3-2 on the season. Kirk Cousins went off for 509 yards and 4 touchdowns. Compare that to Baker Mayfield, who still had a pretty good day. I mean, 19 for 24, 180 yards and 3 touchdowns, and you lose. That's a tough way to go.
I just hope Kirk Cousins' arm is still attached to his body after throwing the ball. Was it 58 or 68 times?
Get him a little extra treatment, would
you?
Patrick Ewing, if you're a Knicks fan, this is big for you. Patrick Ewing is rejoining the Knicks organization as a consultant and basketball ambassador.
I
guess that's good. I mean, like, why do pro teams need ambassadors?
They have so much money, I guess.
Just basically they made a cheerleader. He's a cheerleader for the Knicks organization now that his coaching career is done. So this is another big one for Major League Baseball. Japanese right-handed pitcher Tomoyuki Sugano, considered the most successful Japanese pitcher of his generation, is leaving the Nippon Professional Baseball League and coming to America.
He's
to play.
Coming to America.
Yeah, I love that song.
Who sings that?
Is it? Wait a minute.
We're free. It's not a crap. Why have I forgotten?
I can see his face. Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond. Yes.
He is the 2-time winner of that league's Cy Young Award. He's a 2-time MVP, 4-time ERA champion. Pretty good pitcher. So congratulations to whatever team ends up signing him.
I'm just surprised you could say his name.
Yeah. It's probably more like Tomoyuki Sugano.
That sounds good too.
It's a really aggressive sounding language. I can't, like, Japanese and German. They're just harsh languages. Former Bengals wide receiver Chad Ochocinco Johnson has agreed to fight former Steelers linebacker James Harrison in a 3-round MMA exhibition before the Super Bowl.
You know, here's the deal with Ocho. I was probably 6 months ago to a year ago, I had forgotten Ocho even existed. However, because him and Shannon Sharp now have a podcast that pops up on my TikToks 24/7, I watch a good bit of Ocho, and he's really funny. So he does like a million different things. He has like a million different jobs. He actually, to me, he's entertaining, and I don't know why, but I'd probably watch. I probably would.
Really? Yeah, I hate these stupid spectacle
fights. No, I probably would.
So dumb, because you know what they're going to do? They're going to put it on some streaming network as a way to promote that streaming network, just to make you jump off of that to go watch the actual game.
True.
Wisconsin's leading running back, Chez Malusi, is stepping away from the program due to injuries. This is not like an NIL situation. This is not I'm shutting myself down a la Roger Dorn. He had 56 carries for 232 yards and 3 touchdowns on the season, but injuries starting to pile up. He is stepping away. That's tough for the program. That's tough for the team. It's tough for him personally because, man, you don't want to see these guys stepping away in their prime.
No, it's not. It's not.
Clemson's Memorial Stadium and the Panthers Bank of America Stadium will host the Savannah Bananas in 2025.
I love that, man.
The Bananas are going on a 39-game tour that runs from March to September 2025. It's huge, man. Do you think how many tickets do you genuinely think the Bananas could sell at Death Valley?
10,000 plus.
Well, then why not hold it at Doug Kingsmore?
Okay, maybe you think more than that? To watch minor league baseball?
I don't know.
Are we thinking 20s to 30s?
But like, if it's 10,000, why not put it in like AAA ballparks?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Maybe
I'm wrong and they sell 50,000 tickets. I don't know that happens. I think the Savannah Bananas are incredible.
I would go, though.
Yeah, but
I can't wait to go.
There's 80,000 is what that stadium holds. I don't know. We'll see.
And last up, Cole, like lower bowl. Do we think they could sell out the lower bowl?
I think It'd be a stretch.
That's a stretch. Last one, the Reds have hired Terry Francona as manager a year after he left the Cleveland Guardians.
They need help.
Getting recycled, man.
Yeah.
These old hat coaches never go away.
Wish the Braves would do something like that. Sorry, I went there. All right. Hopefully the upstate's getting better. Western North Carolina, we know, still has a long way to go. We'll get back into it. We have not done it yet today, but we will get back into the Storm conversation post Helene, bringing calm to the chaos, also giving updates on what organizations are still doing community events to where you can get good information. Also, Tolos, if you know of places that are doing things this weekend that we can share the message and help other Tolos get involved, or even if they need some essentials or food, help them as well. We'll get into that next. Smitty of Sports Talk Media Network in about 15 minutes right here on the Fan Upstate. And Diesel, we touched on this briefly about an hour ago, but big pickup for the Gamecocks. 4-star wide receiver Jordan Gidron out of Ridgeland has committed to South Carolina, 6'2", 185. We were just talking earlier about they just need one more receiver. Well, Gamecocks got a 4-star today, 4-star receiver today. So that's a big get for the Gamecocks. Got to continue to improve that wide receiver room.
Yeah, the quarterback position feels like, barring injury, is really rounding into shape for South Carolina. Lenore Sellers stays healthy. He's going to be very good for the Gamecocks for a couple of more seasons to come. And if you can get one or two more good wide receivers, which it seems like you got one now, and you can making some improvements there at the offensive line, now you can start outscoring people. Even if your defense isn't particularly stellar, you can start outscoring people or hanging with teams that are better than you.
We will ask Matt Smith of Sports Talk Media Network about this weekend's game for South Carolina as well as Clemson, but also ask him about the injuries for the Gamecocks. We'll get to that in about 15 minutes on the program. But Diesel, this time last week, man, we didn't know that it was going to turn into what it did. We knew that the storm had come through and it was bad, but I remember last Friday night checking off here at the Fan Upstate, leaving the building about 7 o'clock, going to Boiling Springs. And a week ago, it doesn't seem like it's been a week. However, man, some of the things that I saw last Friday night in terms of gas stations and going down, I remember going down 221 in Chesney last Friday, and the entire road was just black. Like, you know how you can see what's to the left, what's to the right because of the store lights and other lights and street lights that we just kind of take for granted. It was so eerie last Friday, man, driving down Highway 9 and 221 and just looking and it was black. And 1 week ago, that's when it was. And, man, we've come a long way in a week. Again, our linemen and first responders have been absolutely amazing, but there's still a long way to go, and there's still a lot of people, Diesel, without power.
Yeah, and we thank the crews that have come in from all over the country to be here. We had that conversation with your friend from Blue Ridge Electric earlier this week.
Kerry Johnson.
It was a Blue Ridge Electric. Yep. And, he was telling me, telling all of us about kind of the way they stage events like this. When they know that something major is going on somewhere, they start activating crews or putting them on standby from all over the country. So if Oklahoma has a whole bunch of tornadoes come through, boom, crews from South Carolina might be called on to head out there. So they get themselves ready to go. And when they have huge ice storms up north, our crews head up there to work on their lines, and we certainly appreciate them for taking time away from their families to be here. My understanding is that linemen in overtime make a good chunk of change, so they're going to walk out of here with a nice little payday themselves. But man, that hard work that they put themselves through and the long hours that they put themselves through, they're facing it this week,
no doubt.
And you're right. You go down some small back road highways that are dark, that don't have street lights on them. And it is an odd, eerie feeling, but it makes it even eerier when you're driving through an area that should be lit up and it's just pitch black at night. You walk out of your front door and you're used to having a street light there. And it's just an eerie feeling to have nothing but pitch black out there.
Tell you, man, some of the things that we've read on air this week, Diesel, going all the way back to Monday, man, this week's gone by fast. It doesn't seem like a week ago, but some of the things that we've read this week have just been so touching, man. Just hard to read, hard to fathom. So many heroes out there this week that have done so many things that we can never, if we put them all in a line and had them line up and give us a list of all of the things that they've done this week, we can never have time on air to read all of the things, the heroic things that people have done in the upstate. We know while the upstate is improving day by day, the Western North Carolina still has a long way to go. I saw pictures today. The roads are just covered in dirt. They're brown. It looks like it looked here on Friday, except 10 times worse with the lines and everything going on.
What was that stat we heard? 6,000 power poles went down. Was that Greenville County or was that the entire upstate?
I'll tell you what, I don't know exactly what county it was in, but it was a lot. It was definitely that many. I believe it was on Tuesday. One of our guests told us that. And again, by the way, shout out to all of our guests from the electric cooperatives and the Duke Energy and the sheriff's departments all week long who have took time out of their busy schedule to join us because, we don't ever want to go through situations like this, Diesel, but when we do, man, the way that people have rallied and came together and the images I'm seeing on Facebook, one after another for truckloads going to Western North Carolina, it gives me goosebumps. And again, there are still idiots out there. There are still people who don't know how to handle these situations and panic and treat people rudely. That happens. But at the end of the day, I believe most people are good. I believe most people understand how to help their neighbors in need. And just looking back on this week, I hope it never happens again. But you do get goosebumps and you do have a feeling of thankfulness and gratitude because of the way the community from Spartanburg all the way to Gaffney to friends of mine who have rallied together and come together as a community. That's what it's all about. And I hope we don't have to do this again anytime soon because it has sucked. Again, not nearly as bad as Western North Carolina, but I think there has been some valuable lessons out of this.
Yeah, there's, I know personally I've learned the valuable lesson of have a generator at the house, have the ability to create power and keep the refrigerator on and keep the freezer cold so food doesn't go bad. There are always things that we can do to prepare a little bit more, especially just at the very minimum, take these things seriously. There's a lot of people who I've heard who said, it's not even going to be a thing. Like we don't need to worry about it. Yeah. And some people, I'm sure there's some people out there who genuinely didn't even know that a big storm was coming our way because people just get caught in their own little bubbles.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a hardcore gamer or you're super into political talk and you don't even pay attention to the news, right? The actual stuff that's going on out there around us. So be more aware of what's going on in the world. Just take small measure steps to get yourself ready, right? Have another extra pack of batteries. Have the ability to charge your phone. Get one of those little phone charger blocks that you can get for like $40 that you can charge your phone off of 3 or 4 or 5 times just off of that. And then of course, if you've got a home, if you got property, prepare yourself as much as you can. Tie things down, right? Yeah. As they used to say, batten down the hatches.
It's right, and that's what we're supposed to do. I'll tell you, I made this on Friday, Diesel. I know you weren't here, but I opened the show with this on Friday, and I'll tell you, you talk about eerie feelings when you hear the people in our community in the upstate who we hear on a regular basis, whether it's radio show hosts like us or weathermen or news stations. I made this collage, and I actually opened the show with this on Friday, and I wanted to bring it back to the table because this just kind of paints a picture of the eeriness that we just never expected the upstate to have to face.
Helene right now is a hurricane downgraded to a Category 1 hurricane right now, but it is still producing heavy rain, and that's going to be the concern today.
Impacts from a hurricane that will be making landfall in Florida. Rounds of heavy rainfall move our way with a high flash flood risk. We're talking 5 to 10 inches or more of rain in some cases. Winds sustained at 30 to 40, but gusting at times to 50 or 60.
Right now, they are, Helene is causing major flooding in Georgia. There is an emergency evacuation going on in Atlanta.
Have died in Spartanburg County and 2 in Anderson County.
Tori, Justin, if you look at this mobile home behind me, it is absolutely heartbreaking to hear what has happened here in Anderson County.
When you hear Diesel deaths so close to home, and we were talking to Scott early just a few minutes ago, and how many deaths have happened, man, I tell you, it almost feels like, I don't want to compare it to Hurricane Katrina because the portion of America that Katrina hit, just Louisiana's not built to sustain a storm. But man, this thing here, it will be compared to Katrina in ways because the devastation it caused. I don't know that you and I 20, 30 years from now, we'll be talking about this for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I was 5 when Hugo came through, and I still talk about Hugo, and I still remember that as a child thinking, we had big pine trees in our yard that could have come down on the house. And, you start thinking about that's a terrible thing for a 5-year-old to have to think about. And, now we've got a whole new generation of kids here in the upstate who have gone through something similar of what I did as a child. So it's certainly going to affect the way they think about these storms. Like you said, we weren't really prepared for this here in the upstate. It's unprecedented to have storms of this magnitude hit us directly right here in the upstate. I mean, the way this thing happened, and Madcraft says it wasn't talked about enough. It should have been hyped up more by meteorologists. Madcraft, I'm not sure that that's exactly true, because a lot of people talked about this storm. But I think the thing is, it was expected to be a lot milder than it was, and it ramped up very, very quickly. And then it was also expected to kind of go up towards Atlanta and then turn left and head over towards the Ozarks and towards Arkansas. So we weren't really expecting to catch the brunt of this at all. And then things changed. So I think it's also important to remember that just because a computer model says that the storm is probably going to go that direction doesn't mean it's going to go that direction. Just because the model thinks it's going to be this magnitude of storm doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stay that magnitude of storm. There's oftentimes, Cole, when a hurricane is coming our way and then it loses its intensity and sort of peters out by the time it makes landfall. And so it only hits us as a tropical storm. And just remember, a computer model is just a computer model. It ain't real life, right? It could certainly go a different way, and it did. The problem is, in this area, we're not equipped to handle this. If you're talking about Kansas and Oklahoma and the Plain states that are used to getting tornadoes, they have shelters dug into the ground around their homes to deal with situations like this. We don't have that here.
DB says, I watched hour by hour that night, never went to bed, and saw it not turning at all. Beeline right for us the entire time. On the text line, 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Tim Holcomb chimes in. He says, hey, guys, it's Tim Holcomb. I now work for a tree company. The amount of devastation and chaos I've seen and heard over the last week was insane. I've found happiness in how we have started acting neighborly and helping those in need again. I wish we as a country would act that way without a hurricane rolling through. Well, Tim, I'll tell you this. I second that. I do second what you said. It's sad that it takes a hurricane for us to come together. And I said on Monday, and I'll say it again, Diesel, this is what we're supposed to look like. As a country, I said it a minute ago, and there's it's not old, but there's a country song the artist talks about, I believe most people are good, right? And I truly believe that. I truly believe, whether it's the racism or whatever the political media tries to put on this country, and a month from now, as divided as we'll be, as we elect, the next president of the United States, I do believe most people are good. And I believe that, we as a country can look, and I know the entire country is oblivious to what's going on because it's hitting us, right? And we're in the middle of it, and we're talking about it more than anybody else. But it's a good life lesson, but it does start with us in terms of getting this country to where it needs to be, and just reminding folks that at the end of the day, we're all neighbors. And I say this a lot about politics, Diesel, regardless of what side you're on, we're all on the same plane. Just FYI. I don't know if you know that or not, but we are all on the same plane. And I don't want the plane to go down. And I don't believe anybody wants the plane to go down, regardless of who the president is, regardless of what happens a month and a half from now. We need to use times like this to love each other and be neighbors.
Yeah, I think we have an unprecedented amount of information and distraction coming at us every single day these days. I mean, you can certainly find yourself going into a bubble, and there's a million different bubbles that you can go into. I think this is certainly a reminder that sports are not life. People can get really, really, really into sports and never really see the forest for the trees, right? They can be so focused on what's right in front of them, not paying attention to what's around them, that it's easy to not pay attention to what's happening out there in the real world and get yourself worked up about over this thing or that thing or whatever it is. But it's proof that we all need to stay vigilant to protect ourselves. And at the same time, Cole, there's just some things you can't predict. There's some things you can't control. There's some things that you cannot prepare for. People in Western North Carolina couldn't prepare for rivers rising to the levels that they did. They couldn't prepare for the sheer number of trees that were going to come down. I mean, we had somebody the other day say, Cole, why don't we just plant all or bury all of our power lines underground? That would fix this problem.
Like a million years.
It'd take forever to do that. It would take a tremendous amount of money, and it would be wrapped up in politics and bickering back and forth for the next 50 years, and it would never actually get done.
Yeah. Texter says Helene was worse than Katrina. It was stronger in size, and the devastation was a lot more. It affected more states and was a lot stronger when it landed and farther inland. I mean, I don't think the texter's wrong there. I don't think so. I mean, you and I have seen pictures. Diesel, it's way bigger than Katrina was. It's huge. It's huge. So
huge.
Texter says South Carolina showed up. They certainly did, and hope they continue to do so. My thoughts and prayers are still with those affected.
Cole, when we come back, let's talk football with Matt Smith. Matt Smith's going to be joining us. We had this conversation earlier in the show with him. We talked South Carolina right out of the gate. We talked Clemson, and we talked Florida State. All of it with Smitty of Sports Talk Media Network next.
entirely possible that Ole Miss was overrated. That's possible. But I think both things can be true. I think it could be that, A, Ole Miss is not the team we thought they were when we were all making our predictions in August. But also, B, if South Carolina wins this game and you look at what they will have been through, including the close loss against LSU, including going on the road and winning an SEC game against Kentucky, and then they knock off Ole Miss in front of their home fans, can't be denied. At that point, South Carolina is a top 25 team. It's undeniable. You've got to put them in the top 25. So I think both can be true. South Carolina wins. There will be a narrative out there that Ole Miss lost to Kentucky and South Carolina, and those aren't big names. But then there's another side to that coin, which is South Carolina's legitimate.
Matt Smith joining us here on the Fan Upstate from SportsTalk Media Network. Let's flip over to the other game here in the state of South Carolina. Clemson on the road at Florida State. Florida State's defense has been kind of all over the place and consistent, oddly enough, to say both of those things about them in this season. You look at the first three games, they give up 24, 28, and 20, which sits right there at an average of 24 points. And in the last two games, they gave up 9 and 42 to Cal and SMU. Just how much of a field day do you predict this Clemson offense has against Florida State? I mean, is there any fight left in the Seminoles?
I don't know. It sure looked like there was a lot of quit in that team against SMU. But I think that's got to be concerning for Mike Norvell and anybody that's a Florida State fan. But you also wonder, maybe they feel like there's new life, that this is part 2 to the season now that young Lele has got the broken hand and he's out. Maybe they rally around Brock Glenn, who frankly, a guy whose name I didn't know until like 2 days ago. Don't know what to tell you about Brock Glenn. Sounds like an accountant. I can't believe that Florida State is going into a ball game against Clemson and they don't have like a hot shot name at quarterback that we would all know, somebody that was like in the Elite 11 with Arch Manning. I don't think that's what Brock Glenn was. I don't think he's of that ilk, of that stature. But I've heard he's got some mobility. Well, that's good because he's going to be running for his life. And some of those numbers you mentioned, about Clemson having a field day against Florida State and what they do defensively. This might be their Alamo. If they're going to rally and have any kind of season, it would start this weekend. Doak Campbell, tough place to play. They would try to rally around their backup quarterback and do some special things. You're going to see them empty the toolbox, right? You might see double passes and double reverses and fake punts and anything else that Mike Norvell's got on the back of a cocktail napkin because they have to generate something. And after this game, this is their chance to pull a major upset. After this, then you're going to start hearing rumblings about the transfer portal and guys quitting on Mike Norvell and everything else. And I'm afraid that's actually where I would put my money. I actually think Clemson is just flat out too good this year. I think this Florida State team went to the portal, rolled the dice, and it didn't work out. And these guys have not meshed. And maybe I'll be wrong, but I think they're going to reach down deep, and Florida State's going to go for, try to throw everything they've got at Clemson, and it won't be nearly enough. I like the Tigers big.
Smitty, my last question for you. Earlier in the show, Diesel and I had the conversation about a statement made by a good friend of ours, good friend of the show, Lawton Swan of Clemson SportsTalk. Clemson, Lawton, is a Clemson media outlet, so it's obviously going to be biased towards Clemson. But he made a statement on the internet that we had on the show earlier today, and wanted to get your thoughts. Lawton said if it were for him as a Clemson guy, he would trade the 2 championships away, and he would also be fine with not having another championship under Dabo Swinney in this new landscape of college football if it meant Clemson didn't have to sell their soul to the 30% graduation rates and the muck of the NIL and the portal. Do you think that is a bad mindset to have if you're Clemson fans? Obviously, that's easier said now that you have won 2 in the last decade.
Yeah. When you start talking about trading in past championships, there's not a lot of skin in the game because you already celebrated those. But is Clemson willing to trade in the future championships? Now, look, I think there's a third way here. It doesn't have to be either or. I feel like Clemson can still have success in this era. Now, NIL is something different. But as far as the transfer portal goes, I really think a lot of that has been overblown. And look, this is it would be a nuanced conversation. I know we don't have time for it. But last year, Clemson's problem was twofold. One, Cade Klubnik just didn't click with the receivers he had. And two, the receivers weren't very good that he had access to. Well, part of that was because Antonio Williams was hurt. Adam Randall was hurt. And then all of a sudden, how much better does the passing game look in Garrett Riley's second year with a healthy Antonio Williams, a healthy Adam Randall, and the freshman phenom, Bryant Wesco? It looks pretty good right now. Well, the reason and all those guys were recruited there and developed there at Clemson. So I'm not anti-transfer portal. I'm fine with the transfer portal. But I also think there's something to be said for development of players. The longer those players are there, the more evidence we'll have whether Dabo Swinney's way works or not. I think everybody panicking over the transfer portal last year was premature. That he shouldn't have gotten an A, a B, a C, or an F. He should have gotten an incomplete. Now we can really start to talk about Clemson and who they are. The defense looks pretty good. The wide receivers look good. Phil Maffa, Cade Klubnik, all these were recruited players. You have to give them time to develop. You don't win big every year. At Florida State, that's a team that had an undefeated regular season, and this year they're talking about firing the coach. That's the inconsistency you get if you live and die with the transfer portal. But by the way, I think there's a third way. You could just, it's okay to take two guys out of the portal too. There's no rule against that. You don't have to take 9. You don't have to take 0. You could just take 1 or 2 that you might need to fill in spots that fit in your culture. And I think that's where we're going to see Dabo Swinney in 2 years and 3 years. I think he'll dip his toe in the transfer portal. And if they get a game changer the way South Carolina did with Spencer Rattler, then he might change his mind a little bit. But you're never going to see, in my mind, Clemson going out there and doing an overhaul and just taking in a whole class from the transfer portal. It's not in Dabo Swinney's DNA.
Smitty, I want to touch on that just a little bit more, what you were saying there about Mike Norvell. Do you feel like he should be in any danger? Mostly because of what you said, his modus operandi has been live by the portal, die by the portal. He's in danger of losing this locker room if he hasn't already. He's in danger of losing half of this roster to the portal this year and to have to do it all over again because his 2025 class is not particularly great, number 35 in the country. I mean, is it a point, do you think he's in danger by the end of this year or safe going into 2025 no matter what?
I think he's got to be safe, but what you said was very interesting. The fact that recruiting is not going well currently either, and that's one of the things to keep an eye on. I'm fascinated by what happens there. To me, it's somewhat analogous to what John Calipari went through at Kentucky, right? I mean, Kentucky was good under John Calipari every year. It can't be denied. But you saw these wild fluctuations as well. Even though they were always good, they weren't always championship material. And he couldn't build a culture because when you're one and done every single year and you don't know what's coming in next year, what happens if you miss on a couple of key guys, which is exactly what happened with Norvell. They don't have good quarterback play. So I think it's analogous to that. And what happened with Calipari, Kentucky fans it finally wore them out. Nobody would look at Calipari's win-loss record at Kentucky and say that's a guy that you'd want to run out of town. But it's not just that. It's the fact that it's up and down and new faces. It's like people are coming in and they're subletting apartments. You got to get to know new people all the time. And I think that's what Florida State fans are feeling right now. So do I think it happens next year? No. But Mike Norvell's got to look in the mirror and decide what he wants, what kind of coach he wants to be and what kind of culture he wants to build. You cannot build long-term stability in the transfer portal. That's not what it's for.
Smitty, great stuff as always. We appreciate you taking time to hop on with us, and have a great weekend wherever you are and whoever you may be covering. We'll talk to you next week.
I know I didn't crack as many jokes this week because, I'm just feeling for everybody that is up there. some of the news coverage I'm starting to see out of, the foothills and the mountains, it brings me down. And so I'm glad you're doing the show the way you are. And anyway, I'm thinking about everybody up there, because even though I live on the coast now, my heart is always in the upstate. And so anyway, that's why I was a little subdued this week, but I miss you guys, and I wish everybody the best of luck up there.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Matt. Talk
Well
to you
said.
next week. When we come back, Cole. Nah, man, you're late. You're going to lose 2 points. Sorry, bro.
As it happens every Sunday afternoon, Gridiron Game Day.
Less than 24 hours away until we find out if Clemson was able to mollywop Florida State like we think they will, Diesel. And then we also will find out if South Carolina was able to do the unthinkable, and that's to most people out there. There are some who are predicting South Carolina to beat Ole Miss, but I tell you what, when you talk about what we said with Smitty a few minutes ago, Ole Miss, they're not going to look over this game anymore. The chances of that aren't happening. With them losing to Kentucky, they're going to be focused. South Carolina is going to get Ole Miss's best game on Saturday, and we'll find out just how good this South Carolina defense is, Diesel, against a really good Ole Miss offense. But let's get it out there. Let's make some predictions and kind of decide what's going to happen over the weekend. Let's start with the Tigers and Seminoles. You said earlier, Diesel, you don't think it's going to be close.
I don't. I think Clemson wins this game by 21. I'm going to say, if you're asking me for a score prediction, I'm going to say, I'm not good at math here. What's 21 points more than 14?
35.
35. All right, 35-14.
Okay.
Which doesn't seem like a blowout, but I think it is a blowout. In college football, to me, especially a road game, if you win by 21 points, that's blowing somebody out on the road.
Yeah, no, I agree with
because this Seminole Nation is going to be there. Tallahassee is going to show up for Clemson, so the environment is still going to be good. Maybe not elite as if this was a top 15, top 20 matchup, but I do think that that Clemson wins this one fairly easily. Maybe Cade Klubnik has to play the entire game this time.
Maybe so. I'm going 38-21.
Okay.
So not far off from where you're thinking. 38-21, Clemson wins. You and I both have Clemson winning on Saturday in Tallahassee, and that would just be absolutely devastating for Florida State, Diesel. That would put Florida State on the season at 1-5. We were talking about them competing for the conference.
1-5. I don't know if I looked this up in my sports dictionary. That is screwed.
God.
Screwed.
Literally 3 months ago before the season started, we were talking about this team, maybe a conference.
And I think you called
winner.
DJ, you're the best quarterback in the ACC.
Yeah. God, he's the worst. He's the worst. I'm telling you, I don't know if anyone saw
benched
this
by
coming.
week 5.
I mean, 1-5 potential. They're going to be 1-5. That's exactly. All right, South Carolina, Diesel. It's going to be a tough one. It's a 9-point spread for the Gamecocks on Saturday, 3:30 kick. It's at Williams-Brice. I tell you what, I've went back and forth this week. I really have. I like South Carolina's chances. I just don't know that they'll be able to outscore the Rebels.
No, I think earlier this week, I think I gave the score prediction of 38-28, and I still feel pretty confident in that 38-28. So I'm going to stay there.
38-28?
I'm going to say that Ole Miss covers, but just barely. Just barely.
So Diesel's going 38-28 Ole Miss. I'm going Diesel 31-20.
Okay.
31-20.
So Ole Miss covers, but you're saying they cover by 2.
Yep. I say 31-20. You say 38-28. I tell you what, man, I like the Gamecocks because of their defense, but they've got to prove me wrong when it comes to their offense. I said it earlier in the show. I think that you'll look at this game Saturday and think, man, South Carolina's offense just isn't there yet. They've still got to make some better decisions at the offensive coordinator, play calling position, and they also have to be better at the receiver room. I'd like to be wrong here. I really would. But I don't think I will.
Upset Picks Challenge. You got 60 seconds to get your picks in. Give me your name, give me your game, and give me your spread. J Girl, who I think is brand new, says, give me South Carolina +9 over Ole Miss. Amazon guy, he's going with me. Duke over Georgia Tech for 9. Bomo, we got your pick. Billy Ho, we got your pick. Greenville Gamecock. Pac Fan Shuff. Let's see. We got at J Rock got yours in. Jarrett Tripp. Ash in Five Forks. I think we had somewhere near a dozen new players get into the challenge this week, and I love it. Come on, Tolos. If you didn't get in this week, get in next week. The Upset Picks Challenge brought to you by Ingles. Thanks for listening. Show number 135 in the books. We'll be back on Monday for show 136, Tolos.